Please come to order. Good morning. Welcome to the Commissioners' meeting of St. Mary's County. This date, Tuesday, September 23rd, 2025. I am Randy Guy, President of the Commissioners of St. Mary's County. I'd like to introduce the other commissioners. Sitting to my right, representing the 1st Commissioner District, which includes Ridge, Piney Point, St. George's Island, Mr. Eric Colvin.
Good morning.
Representing the 2nd Commissioner District, which includes Leonardtown, Hollywood, Mr. Mike Hewitt.
Good morning.
Sitting to my left, representing the 3rd Commissioner District, which includes Charlotte Hall, 7th District, Golden Beach, and Mechanicsville, Mr. Mike Alderson Jr.
Good morning.
Representing the 4th Commissioner District, which includes Lexington Park, some of California, Great Mills, and some of Hollywood, Mr. Scott Ostra.
Good morning.
See, next Commissioner Ostra at the end of the dais is David Weiskopf, our County Administrator.
Good morning.
On my immediate right is Tracy Rohan, our Recorder for today. Sitting at the table to my right is our Communications Coordinator, Lenika. Good morning. Our video production team is behind the glass. Please turn your cell phones off or on vibrate. When you come to the presenters table, please come approach by coming down the center aisle. And remember, this meeting is being televised, so you need to speak clearly and directly into the microphone for recording purposes. At this time, we'll please everybody stand. We have the invocation and pledge by Commissioner Alderson.
Lord, we ask for your blessings and wisdom upon our deliberations this morning. May you guide us with compassion and understanding as we strive to be better leaders for our community and even better listeners to the people we serve. We ask this through your name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Alderson. Okay, next we have approval of consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
The first motion, I approve to approve the minutes of the September 16, 2025 meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. We have motion 2.
I move to approve the FY26 scholarship applications and authorize the Commissioner President to sign all related documents.
Second.
I have first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any disapproval? Ayes have it. Next, we have 2 proclamations, the first being National Service Dog Month, and second being the International Underground Railroad Month. So for those on the receiving the dog handler.
Oh,
Yeah. Who's this?
this is Ashford.
Ashford. You're not supposed to pet a service dog, right? Right. Oh, you got it. You're good.
All right, good morning. When Tracy came by asking who's going to hand out the, do the proclamation this morning, and I was a little quicker than Commissioner Colvin over there and said, I'm doing the dogs. So, so here I am, presenting a proclamation for National Service Dog Month for 2025. Whereas we believe in the joyful, transformative power of the human canine bond and inclusivity of all citizens, and whereas National Service Dog Month was first established in 2008 to honor the hard work and life-changing impact service dogs have, and whereas for over 50 years, Canine Companions has served as a nonprofit organization enhancing the lives of people with disabilities by providing expertly trained service dogs and ongoing support to ensure quality partnerships. And whereas Canine Companions and their service dogs empower people with disabilities to live with greater independence by providing best-in-class training, ongoing follow-up services, and a deeply committed community of support. And whereas St. Mary's County continues to work toward becoming an inclusive community in which all citizens and their service dogs are embraced. Now, therefore, we, the Commissioners of St. Mary's County, hereby recognize the month of September as National Service Dog Month in St. Mary's County and encourage all citizens to celebrate service dogs and be respectful of the rights afforded to the adults, children, and veterans who lead more independent lives because of their assistance. This date, September 23rd, 2025.
Hi, everyone. My name is Paige Marino. This is Ashford. He is an 8-month-old future service dog for Canine Companions. The nonprofit breeds, raises, and trains service dogs and provides them to adults with disabilities free of charge, which is pretty amazing because a service dog can cost on average $50,000. And so that price tag can be pretty hefty. So as his puppy raiser, I get him in the beginning stages up until he's 8 months old, and then he goes to professional training to eventually find his forever person and change a life. So it's pretty powerful.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good job, puppy.
Well, it's my privilege to read the proclamation for the Underground Railroad. Whereas, in recognition of Maryland as the most powerful destination for authentic Underground Railroad history, and in commemoration of all those involved in the Underground Railroad, including Maryland's courageous Harriet Tubman, the brilliant Frederick Douglass, and thousands of freedom seekers. And whereas, in acknowledgement of the roles played by the people of St. Mary's County in the history of the Underground Railroad, and in commemoration of associated sites, including the Old Jail Museum, Point Lookout State Park, Sotterley Plantation, St. Mary's College of Maryland, and whereas in appreciation of the people of St. Mary's County and those from around the world who have committed to document and share the Underground Railroad through the National Park Service's National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom, and whereas the National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom acknowledges the significance of the Underground Railroad and those involved for its contribution to the eradication of slavery in the United States, and as a cornerstone for more comprehensive civil rights movement that followed. Whereas International Underground Railroad Month provides the opportunity for worldwide open dialogue that illuminates the hopes that arise from freedom for all people and brings to light the injustices still occurring in our nation today. Now, therefore, we, the Commissioners of St. Mary's County, do hereby proclaim September 2025 as International Railroad Month in St. Mary's County and encourage all to explore the historical sites in our county that highlight the history of the Underground Railroad. This date, September 23rd, 2025.
Good morning, Commissioners, and good morning, everyone. I am Janice Talbot Wallflower, and I'm representing UCAC and the NAACP and everybody that loves Harriet Tubman and loves St. Mary's County in Maryland. I'm a former educator, retired educator, and a poet, and I would often recite poetry to the children in my school. And this is one that I loved and they loved. And this explains who Harriet Tubman was. Harriet Tubman didn't take no stuff, wasn't scared of nothing neither, didn't come in this world to be no slave, and wasn't going to stay one either. Farewell, she sang to her friends one night. She was mighty sad to leave them. But she ran through the dark, hot night, ran looking for her freedom. 19 times she went back south to get 300 others. She ran for her freedom 19 times to save black sisters and brothers. Harriet Tubman didn't take no stuff, wasn't scared of nothing neither, didn't come in this world to be no slave, and didn't stay one either, Now, I just want to thank the commissioners and the museum division and all for being protectors of our history. You cannot erase history. And today, this is a perfect example of St. Mary's County standing up and being strong and making sure that history is kept alive. Everyone's history, the good, the bad, the ugly. Thank you, commissioners, and thank you all in St. Mary's County that have that belief in our county, in our community, in our country.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Karen Stone, Museum Division Manager for St. Mary's County, and I'm here today representing all the sites that are part of the National Parks Freedom Trail on the Underground Railroad. It was in September that Harriet Tubman gained her freedom by leaving, so that's why September is Underground Railroad Month, and we do appreciate the work that the commissioners do to help us honor her and honor everyone that was on her support staff, if you will, and for helping us continue to tell all these important stories for St. Mary's County history.
Wonderful. Picture time.
I think on our next main agenda here is the Department of Land Use and Growth Management decision, text 25-0112, amendment to allow use type 28 in RCA overlay district. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Okay. So the public hearing for the text amendment to allow the use type number 28 daycare non-medical in the Resource Conservation Area, the RCA, was held on September 9th. There were 4 speakers, all in support of the text amendment, and we did not receive any written comments. Because this is an amendment to the Critical Area Program, it has to go before the Critical Area Commission. Staff, the applicant, and the Critical Area Commission all thought it would be beneficial to have the information-only meeting with the Critical Area Program Committee to take their temperature. The meeting was held last Friday, September 19th. Lugum staff, the county attorney's office, and the applicant's counsel all thought the meeting went well. The committee did have a few suggestions. They were as follows. To specify that the buildings must exist as of the effective date of this amendment, and the buildings must be legally permitted. These amendments are minor, and they don't change the intent of the amendment. The applicant has signaled that they are okay with the minor changes, and it's likely that these changes will ease approval by the Critical Area Commission. So today, I'm actually asking if the commissioners would postpone the vote by a week to September 30th, so we could make the changes to the amendment.
That makes sense. If it makes it easier to get it through the Critical Area Commission,
Yeah.
it seems like a no-brainer.
I was wondering how the dates were going to work with Critical Area Commission making, then us making the decision like that. Seems a little backwards, I thought,
So they asked that the commissioners make the decision before they do. So if we stay on this path, we'll still be on the same track, on their agenda for November.
Okay.
Okay.
So it really doesn't change anything with them.
Now, when it goes before them in November, it will be pointed out to them that changes they suggested were incorporated? Okay.
Correct, yes, sir.
And these changes, I assume, are fairly minor, or?
Yes, yes, it's just to say that the buildings must have existed at the effective date of this amendment, and the buildings must be legally permitted.
Okay.
That's not hard to prove.
That's not hard.
So you want to postpone the vote, so you want to hold off doing this?
Just till next week,
one
till
week?
till
Well,
September 30th.
The short answer is yes, you want to hold off doing this?
Yes.
Correct,
Okay, all right.
You want us to hold off on our vote?
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, until next week.
Just till next week, so we can make the changes, so you have the actual amendment in front of you with
Okay.
these changes.
So this is for information only then, I take it? So,
This was originally scheduled for the
Decision.
final decision.
yes.
It's just, again, we had that meeting with the Critical Area Commission on Friday, have two ways we think the Critical Area Commission, we can tighten up the ordinance that don't really change the ordinance, always fit what we thought the ordinance was meant to do, but do tighten up, like we said, and more than that, I think to Commissioner Colvin's point, it makes the Critical Area Commission feel better about the process and make them feel like they had some contributions to the ordinance, which we think will greatly increase its chances
Okay.
of acceptance with the
Then
Critical
so
Area
we'll
Commission.
delay this till, you'll get it done this week then, in next meeting?
Yes,
I
yes, sir.
think we're talking, if we come back next week with 10 additional words added to this ordinance, I think that'll be too much.
Okay.
They are very easy changes. It's just
As
between
long as they're
Friday and now
satisfied,
did
I
not
think
give us
we'll be
time to do
satisfied
it.
with
All right, so we'll deal with it next week.
Okay, do it
Sounds
next
good.
week. So this is, pass on till next week. Thank you very much for the
Do we need to
information.
make a motion on that, or?
I don't think so.
No, we just
Don't need to do
consensus.
anything.
Yeah.
Postpone to
Make the changes and bring it back next
So we'll
week.
just come back
30th.
morning of the 30th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Same time, same channel.
Okay, next we go right into county administrator time.
Thank you, Commissioner President Guy, and as always, we'll start with the draft agendas for September 30th and October 7th. September 30th, you'll start at your normal time and place, followed by two proclamations, one for Homegrown School Lunch Week and the other for World Architect Day, followed by county administrator time, commissioner time, closed session for personnel, and then adjourn and have the St. Mary's County CTP tour. October 7th is the joint meeting with NAS Pax River at 9 a.m. And then you'll have your meeting here at 1 p.m., followed by four proclamations: the Faith and Blue Weekend, White Cane Awareness Day, National 4-H Week, and Case Management Recognition Week, followed by County Administrator, then Commissioner time, adjourn, and have the Mako visit at 2 p.m. with the new president, and at 6:30 have the joint meeting with the St. Mary's County delegation. So
Busy day, busy.
two busy weeks in a row. And the first on today's is the Sheriff's Office with Tobacco Compliance Enforcement Initiative MOU for fiscal year 2026. I see Captain Russell and Captain Sarah Smith,
Good morning.
Good morning. And hopefully we can do this without Miss Bell.
Hopefully. And she left me quite a few notes. So the first one for the tobacco enforcement, St. Mary's County Health Department has awarded the Sheriff's Office $25,000 to be used for tobacco sales enforcement compliance checks pertaining to youth under the age of 21. This grant is included in the FY 2026 budget at $20,000. So a budget amendment is included to increase the grant budget by $5,000. This is a revenue-only grant that will help offset related expenses.
Revenue only, what do you mean by that? What's that mean? Revenue only grant.
Revenue only. Yeah,
We might have Ms. Vanetta come up and explain what that type of grant is.
Well, look, it's not that big a deal.
Okay,
I mean, I support it. I'm sure you're trying to keep places from selling tobacco to underage people.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And is it working?
Yes.
Well, that's a good thing. I'll move to approve the FY 2026 MOU between the St. Mary's County Health Department and the Sheriff's Office, Project MD 2643, for the tobacco sale compliance and enforcement in the amount of $25,000, and to approve the related budget amendment authorizing the Commissioner President and the Sheriff to execute any related documents.
Second.
I have a first and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you. And second is a budget amendment for fiscal year 2026 cooperative reimbursement agreement for child support.
You have to bear with me. Mrs. Bell got a little wordy on this one. So this cooperative reimbursement application agreement is for $834,968 total, including $519,536 federal and $315,432 county funds. This grant will reimburse approximately 62% overall of the salary, overtime, fringe, fuel, maintenance, telephone, and supply costs for the child support unit. The related 3.58 grant positions and funding are included in the FY 2026 approved budget. This grant is for less than is in the approved budget due to personnel changes under the grant. A budget amendment is included to decrease the grant funding by $30,315 and the county funding by $32,644,000. The county funding budgeted but not needed in the grant is being realigned to law to move the cost for personnel transferred from the grant and non-child support hours worked by the officers assigned to the grant. There is no impact relative to the net reduction in grant funding because the grant expenses are less due to the personnel changes, including one officer being converted to contract deputy. Respectfully request your approval for this submission.
This is
That
one
was
of,
thorough.
go ahead.
I was just going to say Ms. Bell gave you some good notes there. That was thorough and answered it very well. It's obviously a large grant, a large amount, and a large county match, but it sounds like this is required, mandatory anyway. Not that we wouldn't want to support child support.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is 866,000, something like that, and 315,000 from the county. So how big is the issue of child support in St. Mary's County? Do we have a real problem with that? Is that something that's grown over the years? Is this bigger than it's been before? Is it lower? How are we doing with this issue?
So we have 3 child support officers. We just hired one back on a grant that had retired and came back. So they stay busy with the magistrate, with the child support division of Department of Social Services, doing the mediation, service of the papers. So as far as numbers and the amount of work, they're staying consistent with what they've had done. The paperwork required by the courts, I think, is increasing just for more compliance and more oversight and trying to.
So you think it's increasing is what you're saying?
Yes.
Reason I bring it up is when I was in business, I used to, have someone come in, responding to it, trying to hire somebody. And the point was they started out great, and I was wondering, why this person's so good? How come they're not working somewhere? And within a couple weeks to a month, here comes a child support thing that, says, hey, look, you got to garnish this pay. And by the time I was done, the people couldn't live on what was left over from the paycheck, and they'd leave. And I always wondered why that, disconnect was there, because obviously people need to pay child support. If you're going to have children, you need to pay for it. I just wonder sometime if it's getting any better, if it's getting any worse, or if the problem we have is just continuing to be a major headache for everybody.
Just continuing, and they're taking different strategies and trying to increase that compliance.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
What other form of punishment is there for somebody who doesn't pay child support at all?
I'm sorry?
What kind of punishment do we use when you have no child support paid?
Put them in jail.
So, yes,
They go to jail.
eventually the incarceration part.
'Cause I know a lady who
then-
didn't get a dime from her ex, but he went to jail twice because of it. But she still never got anything.
There's some driver's license penalties, but then that affects their ability to work, so. just
Yeah,
trying
you don't want
balance
to do
the-
that either. Ability to work's got to be maintained somehow. But, okay, just curious.
It's a tough issue. I mean,
It is a tough issue, it really is, yeah.
I move to approve the budget amendment in accordance with the fully executed FY 2026 Cooperative Reimbursement Agreement, CRA, for the child support grant and authorize Commissioner President to sign related documents.
Second.
I have a first and second. All in favor? Aye. Any disapproval? Ayes have it.
Thank you. And the last item from the Sheriff's Department is the Crisis Intervention Team Training MOU for fiscal year 2026.
Good morning. We work closely with the Charles County Department of Health for our crisis intervention team funding every year. This year, we had expected and placed in our budget for 26 $25,000 for that budget that we typically receive from the grant. And in actuality, we're expected to receive $36,182. So what we're asking for today is a budget amendment to increase that grant amount from what was expected by $11,182. The Crisis Intervention Team Training Grant, it funds our training that we're able to provide 3 times a year to officers, corrections officers, and we also reach out to our partners at Pax River Police, Public Safety Police at the college to provide training to them in de-escalation techniques and in different ways. Typically, we have about 70% of our patrol division crisis intervention team trained now, and we're working to increase that percentage with our correction officers.
So this isn't new?
This is not new. We've been doing it for several years.
I don't remember the MOU with them before. And why does it go through Charles County Health Department, not through St. Mary's?
It's a tri-county grant. We actually work together on it. They do all the state funding initiatives, and then they push it out to the different counties. We've been very lucky the last couple of years. Calvert County has been hosting the training at their canine training facility. They also work with the Charles County Department of Health. It's definitely a team effort through the tri-county area to make sure that we're training all of our officers the same in this topic.
Excellent.
Good.
Tell me, what does a crisis intervention team do?
So it's less of a team atmosphere now and more of a mindset for our officers. What started out as just a few officers that would go out together if someone was in some type of either mental health crisis or experiencing just a crisis within their life, now we've spread it out amongst all of our officers. So they're all ready. If someone is having some sort of crisis where someone could come out and help them de-escalate that situation from the moment and get them into some type of available resource before it becomes a hospitalization or an incarceration, we want to make sure we're providing that opportunity.
And how would you know about this crisis? How would someone call you?
Most mental health crises come through 911, and police are the
Okay.
first responders
Okay.
on those.
Yeah, I bring it up because I get these incidents reports from our PIO, and the point was, is I know we have these barricade situations sometimes where someone's having some type of an issue and they barricade themselves, and is that the type of thing that you would deal with?
This would be the precursor to that. So we want to get involved with a crisis intervention trained officer before it reaches the level of a criminal barricade or something where someone would face repercussions. We don't want it to get to that point. We want to try to de-escalate a situation before that with the first responding officer, before it involves a SWAT team or a
Okay.
negotiator or all of those other tactics.
Are these people busy? They do that?
Every day, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I move to accept the memorandum of understanding between Charles County Department of Health and the St. Mary's County Sheriff's Office, Project MD 2650, for Regional Crisis Intervention Team Training in the amount of $36,182, and to approve the related budget amendment and authorize Commissioner President and Sheriff to execute the related documents.
Second. I have a first and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Captains.
Good presentation.
And revenue only, sir, simply means that it has to be spent on a program and not capital assets like building or
Okay.
equipment.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
thank you. Next up is the Department of Finance and Board of Education, St. Mary's County Public Schools, fiscal year 2027 to 2032, State Capital Improvements Program approval. Welcome, Ms. Al.
Welcome.
So this is the time of the year that we start talking about our capital improvements program for FY27. Back in June, we started with the Educational Facilities Master Plan. If we can go to the first slide. We start with the Educational Facilities Master Plan, and there's a lot of process that goes into us getting here today. We have the Comprehensive Maintenance Plan, which you've also received, which is an accounting and recap from our Department of Department of Maintenance of everything that needs to happen in our schools. From the life cycle replacement of a component, which are many in a school, to other projects that we need to address as identified by the state through their maintenance assessment, effectiveness assessment, or the school facilities assessment on my side of the house. And what those two state assessments look at, they look at how we're maintaining our buildings, and they're also looking at how they meet educational program. So the maintenance plan and the educational facilities master plan are both planning documents that outline the need. As part of that, and you have funded these for us, we do studies. When we're going to go in and do a project, we want to maximize that opportunity from the state to participate. So if we're going to do a roof and an HVAC, we're going to look at everything, and you've been in our schools, you see we do everything from the ceiling up, and we try and maximize those opportunities. So we do complete studies for our projects, and they typically cost around $40,000 to $50,000. But it gives us the information we need and is required by the state to document our projects. So all of that planning happens. And then we come to where we are today, which is the right side of this slide, which talks about the State Capital Improvements Program. And these are the projects that are just eligible for state funding. And as the money continues to shrink at the state, that is becoming more and more of a challenge.
Okay.
But we also have to address all of the other things that come into the local capital improvement program. And when the state originally approves a project and we build a school, they pay for the playground and they pay for the sidewalks and the parking lot. After that initial construction, they do not. So that whole portion of the building that is outside, even repointing the brick and all of the things you have to do are not state eligible. So they come into the local capital improvements program. So where we are today is all the state eligible projects. We're continuing in our office to work on our local project requests, and through the critical and programmatic projects that you've continued to improve, we're addressing those issues. The need is greater than the funding available on both the state and local side. We understand that, but we're coming forward with projects that meet those minimum needs to keep the roof warm and dry when it needs to have HVAC when it's appropriate, and to have water in and out. So that's really where we're focused right now. Next slide, please.
Oh, quick question. I think it was last week that the comptroller put out a report about how 80% of the schools in the state of Maryland were decrepit, needed repairs.
Yes.
That was on national news this morning.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so how does St. Mary's County rank in that? I know when you're looking across the state, we take really good care of our schools, but the funding is getting tighter.
It's getting tighter and tighter, and I've got a slide that will address that.
Okay.
At this point in time, I mean, if you look at where we are with just roof and HVACs, we could easily put 10 more projects into this. But we're scheduled to get $5 million annually from the state. And if we talk about Chopticon, which was a roof and an HVAC of one of our larger schools, we have 3 that size, and their contribution was $35 million towards this project. If we didn't get Healthy School grant, and we didn't use our Built to Learn, which we're going to talk about today, $35 million at $5 million a year. Think about how many years it was going to take us to do one project. And right behind it, we have the other 2 high schools. We have the Forest Center that are all of that size, followed by our middle schools and our elementary schools. The need, we could definitely put in 10 more projects easily, but the funding's not there. That's our partners across the state that we work with. They're in the same boat, and that's where that article's coming out from. The maintenance effectiveness assessment that the state did, and they do on an annual basis, is supposed to identify what those needs are. From the state's perspective, they come down, they walk our buildings. They also come down and do the school facilities assessment, which looks at that building from an instructional standpoint. Do you have adequate spaces? All of that information gets fed back to the state legislature to identify and develop more funding coming in. We've been doing this for several years now, and we haven't seen an increase in the funding. So there's a priority, and we're going to talk about funding opportunities again. There's a new funding source that's coming that's going to be predicated on all that information. It's yet to be finalized. So we're still working with that annual $5 million allocation from the state. So our current focus, as we were talking about, is to continue maintaining our infrastructure. We really are. We're looking at roof, we're looking at HVAC, and we're looking at water in and out. Those are the requirements it takes to keep that school open on a daily basis. There is a whole slew of other things that need to happen. But those are the main focus where we are right now with the funding that we have. When we look at our state projects, we are always going to go for a multi-systemic. We're going to try and make that roof or that HVAC, whichever one it is, last long enough so that we can bundle them together. We get more out of our dollar that we get if we can take and do it all at the same time. If you're going to pull out the ceiling to do some roof, some work on there on the HVAC, and you're going to be setting new equipment, you want to replace that roof at the same time. So we are trying to make those projects come together so that we can do it as one holistic approach. Local funding for critical components and larger funding is going to be critical to us. If you're waiting 30 years to get an HVAC system, you have rooftop units that are not going to make it that long. You have chillers that are not going to make it that long. You have pumps and motors that are not going to make it that long. That's where that critical funding that you give us is critical to keeping our systems moving. Where we can, we're going to ask for those chillers to be replaced by the state because we're going to get that 58%. But there are times when that's not possible given the other projects that we're asking for. And as we've talked about, our current enrollment and projected enrollment do not warrant any new schools at this time. Last year, the state gave one local planning project for the entire state for a new project. So those local project planning approvals are getting harder to get as well. Next slide, please. So this is where, Mr. Colvin, this kind of answers your question of where are we? If you look at where the state is right now, based on their assessment, we should be doing in the next 6 years, we should be doing 12 roof replacements and 11 HVAC. What we currently have in our budget for the next 6 years is 7 roofs and 9 HVACs. And the graphic to the right really does kind of explain that. The assessments of what they're saying we should do and the money that they're making available are out of balance. Next slide, please. So where do we get funding from? We're trying everything we can to bring as much money into the county as possible. Traditional CIP is 58%. They did confirm that for FY27 and 28, our percentage is not going to change. In part, that is based on the wealth of the county and how much the county invests into school construction. Every year this comes out, we are slightly concerned that our percentage is going to be reduced, and that's always a possibility. This year they did hold for the next 2 at 58%, and our rolling average is $5 million. Now with the Chopticon project, that was, they understand that you have large projects that can come up. That is the project that they've invested more, and they've doubled what we were able to get. So we're bringing in around $9 to $10 million for this project. With the anticipation we're going to roll back to $5 million when it's complete. We've had specialized sources of funding. We have our Built to Learn Act. We will be utilizing that. We're in the process now of discussions of finalizing our last allocation, which will be for Chopticon High School, which will be $12 million. We have used 1.4 of that on Piney Point to meet the state's requirement for the second year of funding that they did not come forth with. So we'll be utilizing the rest of that, and we'll be taking that to the Board of Ed in October, and the Maryland Stadium Authority will allocate that funding in November. We've looked at Healthy Schools, and that's a highly competitive state grant. And we were very successful in bringing in $6.8 million this year for Chopticon for the asbestos abatement and roof replacement. When Chopticon is finally done, we will be one of the first counties in the state to use 3 state sources on a project to try and get it funded. We'll have traditional CIP, Healthy Schools, and Built to Learn Act. There's a potential for a 4th one because we are going after a decarbonization grant for the windows and doors at Chopticon as well. The Healthy School Fund does sunset this year. This is the last year of funding for that project. What is supposed to be replaced with is the Nancy K. Kopp School Facilities Priority Fund that is based on those assessments that the state does.
Is there a huge difference between the two, or are they?
The state has yet to finalize. The commission that is responsible for developing the requirements for the Facilities Priority Fund has not completed their work. So what we understand is that in lieu of that happening, that some form of Healthy School Facility Fund will continue for this upcoming year until it is complete. So we are anxiously awaiting that. But what will ultimately happen is there will be a Maryland Condition Index, and that will be based on the Maintenance Effectiveness Assessment and the School Facilities Assessment. They'll develop a formula, and where this is going to be, and this is where I think we are so frustrated, and it gets to the article that was out there, the school systems and the projects that have the worst buildings are going to get the money. They're going to go from the worst to the best. So what you have to do that is you have to let them run down. And that goes against everything that we have principles for, where schools should be safe and they should be orderly and they should be conducive for instruction. Unless something changes, that is the direction we've heard, is that priority fund will go to the schools that are in most need, which means you haven't invested in them. And that's frustrating. The aging school program, while very small, we got $50,000 annually. It was a great project. It did not require any local match. We could come in and do some small projects like restrooms, but that project has sunsetted. We received our last funding approval for that in FY26. The Safety School Grant was with the Maryland Center for Safety. It moved back this year to the IAC. We have, I just this morning received approval for our 2 grant applications that we put in for that, for fire alarm systems. That may return to Maryland's Center for Safety in the future, but right now it does stay with the IAC. There is the decarbonization grant, and that really goes towards electrification of HVAC systems, which are not, while they may, the state may look at that as a win to electrify our buildings, the cost and the efficiency on our side is something that we would need to continue to look at. But they do have a building envelope, and that is something that we will continue, which would be doors and windows. Legislative grants, and then any future federal funding. Where we sit today with the Chopticon project, this is the last year of funding for that project. We need about $13 million to finish this year out. We're going to use our Build to Learn Act funding to do that. It probably need about $1.5 million of our state allocation, which they've targeted $9 million. So what we're going to talk about is how we are accelerating Esperanza's project to utilize that additional traditional funding that the state allocated this year, since through other funding sources we were able to bring down the state traditional allocation. So next slide, please.
Before you leave this slide, so back to state percentage of new schools, that's 58%. Is that what I'm reading here on
Yes,
traditional?
it's currently 58%.
But we're not building any new schools.
So they pay 58% of whatever project we bring forward.
So that would include a renovation?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's a paradigm shift in at least I think. Because I know they used to only give so much money for new schools and didn't really fund renovations, but that's all changed. And now with that, the percentage of that is 58% of our renovation costs they're willing to pay if we qualify. And we're with Chapticon, you're going to take your money from this Built to Learn Act at $13,531,000, and you're going to use that on Chapticon?
Yes.
And how much county money are you going to use?
Let's see. So the local share of Chopticon is 27.8 million, almost 27.9.
Yeah, I thought, so you're using, not using all of that, I would assume. Are you using all of that this year?
No, the project is scheduled. It's currently in design. It will be scheduled to go out later this year. But we will, at that point, use the 27.9 to meet the need. What we do first is we do utilize the state funding first. The state share of the project was a little over 33 million. If you look at where we are now, 12 million of that will be Built to Learn, and almost 7 million of that was Healthy Schools. What that leaves is their allocation of what they had planned on giving us, just like we plan here, what the future looks like. We want to still maximize that 33 million that they have earmarked for us. We don't want to give it to another county, which is why when we talk about it, we'll see us accelerating Esperanza's project.
Totally agree with that earmarking and using it. But I'd seen a number here of 10 million in 27, 10,075,000 in 2028 or 3 million. That looks like about 13, a little over 13 million, and you're using the 27 million. This project has just been confusing in some regards because the numbers just jumped up and down. It was 74 sometime, then it seemed like it got down to 39 million. And
so the project originally was a multi-systemic renovation, or was a limited renovation. We were going to be doing the science labs. We were going to be doing some instructional components of that building that needed to be replaced. Based on discussions here at this table, the project was scaled back to be a multi-systemic renovation over time. those science labs still need to be done. There's other elements of that building and structurally that need to be taken care of. But given where we were at the state and the local level, we scaled that project back.
Okay, but tell me this. If everything falls in line, bids come in on budget, when will Chapticon be finished?
So that'll be depending on the phasing of the project, because when you start talking about a project of that nature, normally what we would do is we would build a relocatable complex on site and we would move students out because it's phased construction. It has to keep going. It's not something we can just do over the course of several summers. Given the project, and they're currently, that's what part of it is right now, is working on that phasing of what does it look like. We're not going to be able to have, given the size of that site, all of those relocatables. So that will extend the timing of that project. You're probably looking at a good solid 3-4 years to complete that project once started.
So it could be 2030.
Yes. So for us, though, in order to keep getting the state funding, we have to show that we're getting the local match, which is why at this point, and given what happened at Piney Point, I think the school system, and I would assume the commissioners as well, want to make sure we've amassed all of the state funding that we can, and we have all of the funding for that project. So when we enter in on bid day, we know that we can award a contract and we have all of the project funding to complete it. Piney Point for the school system was and I think across the state, was an eye-opening experience that the state did not fund a second and final year of school construction. So for Chopticon, we want to have all of the money in place, and we're doing everything we can to ensure that by going out and getting all the additional grants and securing all the state funding.
Now tell me about the $5 million limit. That seems to be arbitrary. Was it somehow decided that that was a good number to have? And given the rising cost of things, that hasn't been revisited?
So that's a state formula, and as it is published annually, what our target allocation is. It doesn't mean that that's exactly what they're going to give us, but that in their planning, they're looking for $5 million. It's not enough. It's going to take 2 to 3 years, even for a smaller middle school project, if it's truly $5 million to amass a state amount to do a roof and HVAC. You know, those state numbers are probably, for an average smaller school, you're in about the $15 to $18 million range. So it is 3 to 4 years.
Is this number consistent with, say, Calvert, Charles, or neighboring counties, or counties our size?
More consistent with Calvert. Charles gets more funding than we do. There's a lot that goes into that factor. It goes into enrollment. It goes into there's percentages that they can get extra based on socioeconomic status of some of their schools. I think if you talk to the IAC, they'll tell you they know it's not enough, but if the allocation across the state does not increase, they can't change the percentages.
You gave us a document, this facilities document. I got it a few weeks ago, and I always read that with great interest. And I see their capacities in schools, especially elementary, are down in the 60%. And you're talking about starting a redistricting process. Will that have an impact on your CIP?
It should not have an impact on the CIP. The need is the need for roofs and HVACs. That's really where we're completely focused on. What we're looking through the facility utilization and school boundary study to do is to maximize those opportunities for efficiency in our buildings and to take a look at them. Most of our schools are in that 85 to 100% range in terms of capacity. The ones that may have a little less, it could be a program that's causing that.
I must have read another report, but the one I read very thoroughly.
We shouldn't have any in the 60%.
I'll show you.
Okay. We are looking at everything. We have the first community forums coming up this week to start that process. When it talks about utilization, we're going to be in a bind, and we've talked about this for years. When you hit 100%, that means you have exactly the way it should be, and that's where an optimal school should run, should be in that 95 to 100% range. When we start growing, and if growth continues, we've got a lot of developments that are being talked about in this community right now. If they start growing, we know that the rule with the state is 50% of the students have to be in relocatables when you ask for a new school. The other 50% have to come by the time that building is complete. So when a new building opens, you have to have 100% of that filled, 95 to 100%. They want it filled. So if you're talking a high school, that's 600. If we're going to build a 1,200 capacity building, that we have to be overcrowded, and we're not there yet. The other 600 have to come within 2 to 3 years of the start of construction. At a middle school, you're talking 500 in place, 500 more to come. And in an elementary school, you're talking about 350 to 600 by the time it's complete.
How long would it generally take to, let's just say, build a brand-new high school? How many years?
So if
are we
we're
looking at?
talking a high school, from the time that we do the very begin of the design to construction, you're talking a good 5 years. We're not going to grow that fast. Even if all the development happens, it's going to be slow. And what you're going to do is you're going to start building towards that 50%, but then you've got to get that other half. It's something that the county is going to have to look at for, a good period of time, because we're not going to have that influx we did when we had base realignment and closure, and we had an infusion of hundreds of people coming into the county at one time. And what you're going to see is you're going to see migration, someone moving from a first starter home to a newer home. And then you've got to backfill that position or that home. And you're going to have communities that have aged out. I mean, I personally live in a community that's aged out twice since I've been there, and there's others that have done that. You have to go through those processes. So this is going to be a very long process as growth continues and enrollment changes. And in the event that we were to start talking about, let's just talk about a new high school. New high school today, a 1,200 capacity school, that's going to cost around $125 million. And if our annual allocation is $5 million, think about the math. Something has to change at the state level in terms of funding, and they're aware of it, and I think that's where the priority fund's coming. But again, that's going to hit your most needy schools first, and that need is great before you even start talking about new school construction.
Well, I have you on this topic. I did take a picture of the page that I read in that facilities, and it was chart 17, which talks about capacity utilization based on FTE enrollment, chart 17. And it talks to local rated capacity with relocatables.
Okay.
And
That's a
local
different-
rated
yeah.
capacities. Now, there seems to be a difference between state-rated capacities and local-rated capacities. State-rated capacities seem to be higher than our locals. How's that work?
So state-rated capacity is what they fund to. And when you start talking about that, it's pretty much 25 students to a classroom. Local rated capacity for us, there used to be a big difference at kindergarten and pre-kindergarten. That really has over time changed because the state has increased their kindergarten to 23, we're at 25. So it's very, very minimal. When we start talking about relocatables, that's how we house students when we're overcrowded. Those relocatables are getting old. They're very, very old. Some of the state units predate me. So they're and I'm getting up there. There's old, they're in need of repair, and we really don't rely on them in terms of capacity. We have been in the process over the last couple of years of demolishing ones that are in the worst condition. If you want to count those, then they need to be made new.
I'm just looking at what's in this chart.
Yeah,
I
we
didn't-
have them,
I
they're
didn't make
there.
the chart up. It's
Yeah,
the
we do
board.
have them. They're there. Many of them were put in place during the 1990s when we were doing the school construction program, and they housed students during phased construction. They stayed. They served a really great purpose during that period of time. But at this point now, when you can look at $100,000 to $150,000 to rebuild, could be more to rebuild them. They really are not reliable in terms of longevity.
All right, well,
We
I'm not
need to be
interested in
replacing them.
bogging down into this. I just
But that, yes, I
wanted
see
to
where you're getting
understand
to that
why you have a
percentage.
different
I
accounting
think-
system than the state's accounting system.
Yeah, I think when you really look at it, if you look at that state, you're going to start to see where we're at in terms of we're right at that 85 to 90% for the bulk of our buildings. Some are over that. And then this does not account for any growth in terms of what could happen with the developments that are being proposed.
I have one last question. I'll let you move on, I promise. I won't bite you. So we know Chapticon has seats, or according to this chart, Chapticon has seats.
Mm-hmm.
Leonardtown does not. It looks like it's well overcrowded. Now, we used, and again, I know I was on the board in the last century, and people like to point that out as, you know, and I am old. But I tell you what, the last century wasn't that long ago. And the thing I'll say about it is this. We used to say if you lived in this district, your kids went to this school. And it seems like we've changed, or I shouldn't say we, the school system has changed their model to say if you can provide transportation, you can pick the school of your choice. I may be wrong about that, and I hope I am. But it seems for Leonardtown to be so overcrowded. Are all the kids who go there kids that are in that district, or people allowed who are not in that district to go to that school?
So there is an opportunity to request a waiver, but it is stringent, and there is a lot of information about capacity of buildings, and a lot of waivers are not approved because of capacity. At the high school level, we do have programs that may be a portion of that, but if you look at the ins and the outs at our schools, the amount of students that leave one school to go to another school for a program and the amount come in are pretty level. So it's not like one school's gaining a lot. Leonardtown, in reality, it serves the central portion of the county, which is our development district, where the most growth happens. And if you look at that continued growth, if you look at the growth that's happened in Leonardtown over on the 235 corridor, the area has grown. That boundary has continued to get new homes. So that is something that will be looked at as part of the study that is ongoing, is how do you find balance with that? But taking into account of that is going to be the growth. And I've had lots of conversations with land use and growth management about that. You know, if you want to take a look at, you know, a development that was approved, has a certain number of occupancy permits, and then how much is remaining, that's crucial for us to be able to do our analysis. You know, the town of Leonardtown is continuing to grow, and they've got some additional developments that are going to occur. But if you really look at Leonardtown, to the north of that is a commercial. They're divided between Chopticon and Leonardtown is a commercial zone that kind of barricades that off. And then you look to the south of that on the Route 5 side, it's very rural, so that development's not going to happen. What you really need to be looking at is on the 235 side and all the development that's occurred. It has to be balanced. So it's one of the things that will be considered amongst many as the study continues.
Okay, so if someone says to me, how come Leonardtown's overcrowded? I won't be able to say kids who aren't in that district are going there.
There are students in all three schools, all three high schools, that go there for program. If you look at the number of students in and out, it is relatively balanced. It's not like one school is receiving more waivers in than another, that they don't have them going out to another. You know, a student that lives in the Leonardtown campus or in boundary may go to the finance academy, or they may go to the fine arts academy at Chopticon, or they may go to the STEM Academy at Great Mills. There's not a huge change based on waivers in and out.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I have one more question on this page, if you may, if you would please. On the Maryland Energy Administration Decarbonization Grant, are there any requirements in that for us to start popping solar panels on Chopticon, Leonardtown, and Great Mills, or any of our schools? I'm just curious if that's like any kind of grant requirement for that.
So there are multi-levels to that grant. There's different ways you can apply. We're going under AO2, which is has building infrastructure in it in terms of the envelope. There is also within that would be HVAC, and there would be solar panels. Because we're not going with an electrified HVAC system, Chopticon does not qualify. And what you're really talking about when we start talking about that, we're talking heat pumps. And heat pumps in schools are notoriously not able to be balanced, and they don't meet the needs.
Yes.
So the other option is solar or geothermal. Geothermal for us, we've tried this in several opportunities to look at it, is site specific. It really can be a challenge because of the amount of wells and the acreage that you need. So what we're going after is building envelope windows and doors that are going to increase efficiency. I don't see us leaning towards going to an electrified system. The other piece of that is, if you're going to an electric heating system and you look at SMECO's portfolio, you have to look at how they generate that electricity, and most of it is fossil fuel. So when you start talking about electrification, you're still using fossil fuel because the electric is made from
because if memory
generated from
serves, in the legislature, in last year's General Assembly, there was a bill that specifically said for new school construction, if you were doing anything to the parking lots, you had to put infrastructure in for solar panels. Now, I'm not sure if that bill passed or not, but would that apply to Chopticon and its current plans?
It does not. Because the project is pre-approved, it does not, and because it is a multi-systemic, it does not. Now, if we were applying for this grant, yes, we would have to find alternative sources other than fossil fuel.
And thank you.
Next slide, please. So we've kind of talked about this already, but what does it look like in the future? Traditional CIP funding will change when the priority funding is established. We will continue to look at multiple sources for every one of our projects to see what we can do. We'll need to coordinate efforts within the division as we maximize our opportunities based on the state's assessments and the new MD condition index. And then we'll continue to look even outside of the state and look at federal sources. Coordination with the IAC and the commissioners is going to be more important than it ever has as we look to try and find ways to bring these projects online in a shrinking environment. I mean, if we're still getting the same $5 million that we were 3 years ago, we know that $5 million doesn't go as far as it did 3 years ago. So we're going to have to keep open communication with our state representative at the IAC and working with the county finance department. Next slide, please. So where we are today is just our state CIP projects. We are continuing to work on our local CIP, and you'll see on here for our critical and our programmatic FY 2032 says pending. We are in the process of reviewing all of the information at the school system level of what our critical and programmatic projects are going to look like. Those do get presented to the Board of Education in December. The big piece of that is, we had a huge change over the summer, and we did get a budget amendment to bring forward a couple of key projects. Those project studies are very near completion. I mean, they've been working hard since July when we got the money. All of them will be coming in before the end of October. Then in November, we will incorporate them into our local CIP, present it to the Board of Ed, and then it will be submitted to you the very beginning of January. So in October, when we come forward, it will only be the local detail sheets for these projects because we don't know the budget scopes yet for those other projects. So where we are, Chopticon High School, we are looking at for the local side of it, 2 more years of local funding. Once under construction, we use all of the state funding sources first. We want to use their funding up as soon as we get it. What that allowed us to do when we start talking about this is bringing in that extra money from the state allowed us to look at Esperanza Middle School. We're replacing the chiller currently right now, but as you know, that project did have issues last year. That school had issues, and we had to relocate some students for a period of time. We really need to address that HVAC system. So when we sat down over the summer and we really started to look at this, knowing that we're bringing in all of the money for the state project for Chopticon, it freed up our allocation that they had. So what we're going to do is we're going to advance the Esperanza Middle School HVAC project without the chiller because we're already replacing that. And we had a chiller at Leonardtown High School that has failed, so we're going to bring that forward as a state project as well. The Leonardtown High School HVAC, we would enter into a study phase this year. So the remainder of that looks exactly like it did last year. The only thing we did to offset Esperanza coming in, we knew we had those funds. We did move Ridge and Lexington Park's roof and HVAC. They're in better shape than Esperanza's. We moved those out to FY29. So we flipped them, and then we're maximizing our state opportunity. So next slide, please. We can look at the state slide. So what that really looks like, 15.6 million is the remaining amount on Chopticon. We were going after the state decarbonization grant that will buy that down a little bit, and then the Build to Learn Act will take the bulk of that out. Knowing that we had an approved allocation this time last year, they were looking at around 11 million. We're going to go ahead and advance that Esperanza project for design and construction in FY27, and then bring forward the Leonardtown High School chiller number 2. So while it shows 22 million, a good 12.5 of that is going to be Built to Learn Act, and then if we can bring in some additional funding for decarbonization grant, it will buy that number down. Moving forward, that puts us in a second year of Esperanza, and then bringing on Leonardtown, and then coming down, bringing on Town Creek and Banneker's roof projects and Banneker's HVAC. And then you're going to see in 29, this is where it's really starting to stack up. We've got quite a few state projects that need to happen for Ridge, Lexington Park, Oakville, Mechanicsville, and Leonardtown Middle School. And as we talked about, all of those projects we should be doing right now, but we know that the funding is not there. And that's where critical becomes important, because what you're going to see us come forward with is some rooftop units that need to be replaced, or components, pumps and motors that need to be replaced to buy us that time until we can bring these projects on.
And we currently really don't know what the state is going to give us because of their budget constraints and problems, plus they're changing around a lot of these grants.
Yes, given the article that came out and all of the attention on it, I think my colleagues and I across the state are going to be very hopeful that change is getting ready to happen. It needs to happen. It's needed to happen for a long time. It's just now getting the attention at a national level that it needs to have.
County Administrator, does this acceleration in Esperanza's, does that change our bonding requirements? I mean, we were short 15 million last year in bond authority. Is this going to impact our bonding authority to be able to bond these projects?
I'd have to get with Ms. Van Cleef and take a look at it.
Okay.
And no, as we're currently sitting, we're looking at this as a state project, but we will be out looking for those grants as well for those to see what else we can bring forward. Right now, what we don't want to lose, 11.3 million. We want to find a way to maximize that to bring in another project.
And that 11.3 million
is what the state targeted for us to have in FY27. Given the amount of money that we're bringing in on other sources of state funding, we want to recapture that for another project, because if we don't utilize that for Esperanza, it will be deferred to another county.
All right. And when are you going to know when you have it?
So we know that we have the 6.6. We know we have the Built to Learn, and the application for decarbonization will go in. It has to be in by November, and we should know by about January or February on that one what's going to happen. But even just sitting where we are, out of that 15.6 million that we need for Chopticon, 12.2-ish is going to come right off of that for Built to Learn. So that's only going to leave around 3.5 million for the state to pay this year out of the 11 million that they have targeted for us.
I see our finance officer's coming
I
up.
believe she might have the answer, sir.
Well, let's just say it's important to understand what our bonding requirements are.
So with any shift forward in the timing of these expenditures, that would affect our bonding requirements because, as you'll recall, during our last process, the bonding authority was reduced, so we rearranged our projects to accommodate that. Rearranging again, we would need to go back forward and ask for more bonding authority. In the current years, now that it's a reduction, it appears here on subsequent years, but for 27, it would have an impact.
All right. Well, that's the budget we're getting ready to work on here in a few months.
Right, because as it stands right now today, without the change to the critical or the programmatic, with that shift in this year, we're 2 million over where we were last year. And in 28, we're at 2.7 million over.
Yeah.
So it's about a $5 million increase for the Esperanza project.
Okay, because I noticed here on this summary of information that this was going to increase local funding by $2,490,000, and that's regarding this Esperanza.
Yes. So the other thing that happens to the project this time of the year is the state does increase their cost per dollar. When it comes to a systemic renovation, we use our numbers, and the state realizes that we pay a premium for roof and HVAC work because we don't have the same level of contractors that other counties do. And our prices are higher per square foot for these projects than you may find in PG County or Montgomery County. So they do work with us on our budget.
Are they Davis-Bacon Act requirements for labor?
it really depends on the source of the additional funding that you bring in. So as it stands, no, these are not.
The local funding is not.
Right. These projects will not. It just depends when you bring in another source of funding from the state or from the federal government, some of those can then require it.
Yes, I agree.
The other piece of this is we really wanted to address dehumidification of all of our HVAC projects. So we went back and we looked at all of these projects. We looked at the solutions that we have with our engineers, and all of these projects were increased to address ventilation and dehumidification, because we don't want to build another project, that would have a potential to not have that. And it has come down to bid day sometimes, and that's what has happened. So these projects were increased slightly to address dehumidification and ventilation, as well as the increased cost.
All right, well, I think it's going to be important for your finance and our finance people to get together so we understand these impacts on bonding. And if you don't have it in your budget to be able to fill this gap for the money, and you need it to come from us, that we need to know that in advance. We have our own share of projects that are running a little bit over funding, and we're trying to run around finding out where we can plug those gaps. And there may not be any money left if we have to figure this out. We've got this joint meeting with the delegation coming up on October 7th, and that may be an ideal time if we're going to need additional bonding authority for schools or for whatever the project is.
Okay. And that goes back to the comment that I made. This is a partnership between the state and the county. And we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can in due diligence to articulate that information and share it. And to me, what I call this is a reset. We are very consistent in the CIP that we bring forward to you. Unless there's some kind of an anomaly that comes up that we didn't know about, we try to be very consistent in our 6-year CIP.
And this is an example of an anomaly.
Yes. So given the current weather conditions that are causing it to be more and more challenging to address ventilation issues during the summer, we reevaluated that, and really just looking at how we can maximize those state dollars that are currently available to us and what we can do. This is sort of a reset, as by the time we get to our local CIP, this will then predict for us what we need to be for the next 6 years. So this is just a reset year to try and realign where we need to be.
Thank you.
So the next step is, if the commissioners approve today, it has received Board of Education approval. We have a deadline to submit by October 6th to the IAC, which will then begin their process of evaluation.
Any more questions, commissioners? No, I'm good. If not, I need a motion.
I move to approve that the Commissioners of St. Mary's County sign the letter of support for the FY 2027 through FY 2032 State Capital Improvements Program as approved by the Board of Education on September 10, 2025, to be submitted to the Interagency Commission on School Construction in accordance with state procedures.
Second.
Discussion. So this will mean that we have to find the new money that you need, the $2,500,000 or the $6 million, or how much money does the county have to reallocate to fix this FY27 issue?
So right now, as we sit today, without looking at critical and programmatic in totality, we're right around $2 million over where we were last year. It's exactly $2,099,717 over where we were. In our review, what we're trying to do is minimize any more change to FY27, but we do know we've got some of those projects that we talked about over the summer that need to come in. In terms of where we are, if we go down this path with the state projects, they're going to stay the same. What it really will be predicated on is whether the state participates or not in those projects in the future. So that ongoing dialogue has already started about advancing the Esperanza and Leonardtown projects. So it's twofold. For us right now, it's $2 million, a little over $2 million, and then it's whether the state will participate or not. In the event that the state does not participate, say for instance in the chiller, we have to replace the Leonardtown chiller. So that would be state funding that would come in, and we would work with you like we always do to try and find that balance. But right now, we're trying to get every dollar from the state. That chiller at Leonardtown does have to be replaced. So in the event,
my concern gets to be is approving something without knowing we have the state funding.
and that is That process is a little long. What happens is in December, they make their 75% recommendation. If you receive 75% recommendation, that's a good indication it's going to move forward. In January, they get to 90%, and then, of course, we do not get 100% until the legislature closes. So I think, given the articles that are out there now, there's going to be a definite spurred interest in the legislature as the fall.
Tell me, when you say the article's out there, what's that mean?
That the state has 80% of their buildings that are failing. It's on the.
So that means they're going to come up with more money somehow.
I would hope that they would
You would
come up
think
with
so.
additional funding.
The bad look going into an election
yeah,
year, have
right.
failing schools.
Yes.
Failing schools doesn't sound good for election, yeah, you're right.
So I would hope that, given that the information that led to that article has been known for years, it's been there.
So the worst case basically come with 2 million more right now, worst case.
Well, that's not the worst case.
Well,
That's the case known with
That's
the
case known
information
right
we
now.
have.
What-
That's-
what's
At
known?
2.1,
What's known?
basically.
That is if the state comes
2.1.
through with their portion of it right now, that's $2 million.
But if they don't, we continue to have to do this project, though. We can't, like, hold up. If the state says we're not doing it, can we say, okay, we're holding up?
We can't operate with one chiller. Those are the,
The
those
short
are the
answer is
things.
no. We have to do it.
Exactly. We have to find a way collectively to make it work that we can keep the buildings running the way they need to run.
I get it.
And,
I'm gonna
when-
take a real chance, one chiller and that fails.
Well, okay, I get it, but where are you going to find the money? Well, okay, go ahead. You got a motion in a second.
I got a first and a second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes
I'm
have
going
it.
to vote no.
You're voting no?
Yeah.
One no.
all right, thank you.
Thank you. The next up is from the Department of Economic Development regarding the determination of fiscal year 2026 fee in lieu for the purchase of transferable development rights, otherwise known as TDRs. Welcome, Ms. Hinkle.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kelly Hinkle, Deputy
morning.
Director for Economic Development. Ms. Sydney Garner, the Agriculture and Seafood Division Manager for our department, will present the action item for your consideration today.
Good morning, Commissioners. In 2007, the county revised the TDR program to allow the purchase of development rights from a sending parcel to be used to increase density on a receiving parcel. To ensure against the possibility that there is a shortage of TDRs, a developer may pay a fee to the county instead of purchasing a TDR. The fee is to be used by the St. Mary's County Agricultural Preservation Commission to acquire property having a resource deserving of protection. The fee in lieu program is intended to supplement but not supplant the private market. The county maintains a website that lists the contact information of people who have TDRs for sale. Anyone interested in acquiring a TDR may contact someone on the list to purchase a TDR. From the county's comprehensive zoning ordinance, Article 2, Section 2610, the fee in lieu for each TDR shall be 120% of the average fair market value paid for TDRs in arm's length intermediate transaction in the previous fiscal year, as calculated by the DED Director. The DED Director shall make public the fee in lieu calculations no later than 30 days following the end of the fiscal year. The County Commissioners shall receive the right to increase or decrease the fee in lieu within the 30-day period following the DED Director's annual determination, after which such determination shall remain in effect until the following fiscal year. For fiscal year 2025, the Commissioners of St. Mary's County voted to keep the fee in lieu value at $4,861.02. In fiscal year 2025, the Land Use and Growth Management reported to the Department of Economic Development that 5 TDRs were certified available for transfer, meaning the property owners yielded development rights on a total of 2.55 acres. Legum also reported to DED that 8 fee in lieu of TDR agreements were processed last fiscal year, where the parties purchased the equivalent of 137 TDRs from the county, totaling $665,959.74. as the $4,861.02 per TDR. As stated above, these proceeds will be used for land preservation efforts. 0 intermediate transfer transactions at fair market value have been reported for fiscal year 2025 per the ordinance of the fiscal year 2026 fee in lieu to be recommended is 120% of 0. We did want to note that intermediate transfers are not reported to DED until the final instrument of transfer is processed. So the fiscal year 2024 value was provided after the determination of the fiscal year 2025 fee in lieu. 120% of the fiscal year 2024 fair market value is $5,280. So according to the county's ordinance, the county commissioners may increase or decrease the fee in lieu within 30 days of the DED director's determination, after which such determination shall remain in effect until the following fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
All right, this one is an interesting one.
It is.
So you have this term fee in lieu. So what I'm familiar with from previous years is what we would do is if someone wanted to build a house or do some kind of development that required TDRs, they went out and purchased TDRs. And I've seen in this chart that we have in our thing here that, you know, it's been as high as 47 back in 2016 and in the 40s, but now it's down to 3. And it talks about fee in lieu transactions of 137. What am I missing there? Why are fee in lieu transactions so high?
Isn't that our price is too low?
I don't know. Well, that would be the sense. So it's cheaper to just do the fee in lieu than to buy the TDR?
On the fair market, right.
And the fee in lieu is this $4,861?
And that's why your recommendation is to go up to the 5,280.
Yeah, so the recommendation is going to the most recent information that we have, which is FY24. So the information lags. So the most accurate information we have on fair market value is FY24, which makes 120% of the fair market value $5,280.
This doesn't seem to be enough money to change this metric that's going on where people say, okay, I need 3 of them, I can give you $15,000. Hey, here's a check, I'm done with that. Versus going out and actually getting these transfer of development rights. It just seems like there's something missing in this scenario that's just makes it easier for people to write a check than to actually go through this process. And again, what I'm looking at here, what got my attention was this 137 in 2025 versus previous years when it was 0. So, and look, I know you're the acting Ms. Hinkle and Ms. Garner. Thank you very much. It may not be a fair, but I mean, I have no problem like voting for this.
Yeah, I think it's just indicative of the increase in development and the need for the TDRs. And in some cases, I guess it's just easier to pay the fee in lieu than go and track down someone selling it on the fair market.
Like I'm pretty good at math, but I won't try and do the percentage increase. But if it was 6 last year and this year through 25, it's 137. I mean, Lord knows. There's some reason people are just going to that right away instead of using the TDR process. So maybe at some time you can give us some information that would help us understand what's been the shift to go in that direction. Because again, for so many years it was 0.
Well,
and now it's up.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it sounded like what you said, there's not enough on the market to meet that need for 137.
Well, didn't you say well, there's a bunch?
Sorry, maybe I misheard. I thought you said there was 6 on the market. Is that?
No, you keep a TDR bank, don't you?
Yes.
And how many you get in the bank?
In FY25, it was 5.
Okay.
You had 5 in the bank?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I always thought that was higher. Is that something that's dropped dramatically, or has that been the same?
I'd have to go back and look. I don't know historically. And we can get with Lugum to understand what the TDRs are being, what type of development they're being used for.
Well, again, I don't want to, I mean, at one time, these TDRs were $20,000, which obviously made the fee in lieu like, well, that's not such a great idea.
Right.
But it seems like now that they're so low, the fee in lieu is just easier.
Easier.
Well, we
Yeah, I
can
think-
raise it up if you want to.
Yeah, I think we've kept it fairly low for the past 3 years, so it's probably time to get it back up to, it looks like it'd go back to the 2020 rate.
Yeah. I'm still not sure it's going to make much of a difference. All right, well, this might be something worth looking at when
In
the budget
today's dollars,
season.
you're right.
When the budget season comes along. All right, anyway.
All right, well, I move to set the FY 2026 transferable development rights fee in lieu at 120% of the FY 2024 average fair market value of intermediate transfers, $5,280.
Second.
I have a first and second. All in favor? Aye. Any denials? None. Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is the Department of Public Works and Transportation, the Van Ward Road to reduce speed limit. Acting Director Donnie Mills. Welcome.
All right, today we are requesting a reduction in the posted speed on Van Ward Road in the 7th District. Several landowners expressed their concerns about the posted speed, so we attempted to locate an ordinance which set that speed, but we were unable to find one. So next, we checked the road geometry to our current standards. We found that the road functioned as a local road, R2, and the road type is close to what we call a court. So with the number of lots served, less than 50 lots. We also looked at the travel width of 18 feet is required. It's not 18 feet throughout that road segment. We also looked at the right-of-way width. The regulation, well, our standard is 45. It's a variable road width, right-of-way width. The largest section is 40 feet in width. We also looked at the horizontal radius, the minimum. Our standards are 200. It does not meet that. And we looked at the shoulder width. The standards are 4 feet. It does not have 4-foot shoulders throughout. And lastly, the maximum design speed for a court is, per the standards, is 25 miles per hour. Therefore, we're requesting that we reduce it to 25 miles an hour.
I had an opportunity to use this road when I helped a constituent down there with a pier. And the point was, I couldn't believe it was 35 miles an hour. Now, the minimum width on this seemed to be well below, well, it looked like it was like 12, 14 feet. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and at the end, it definitely is narrow.
Yes, it definitely is narrow. And the point is that, have you had any accidents or, I mean, I strongly support this. Have you had any accident or any data that suggests there's safety issues there?
Well, we did not look for crash data. Typically, that's pretty hard for us to get. We can make that request at the sheriff's office.
You don't have to.
But a lot of times it doesn't, it may not, fender bender may not even be reported, who knows?
Sure. Well, all these people who have signed this petition to reduce the speed, I mean, that's
I do believe that's every homeowner on the.
overwhelming.
There.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've talked to most of them.
And lastly, the minimum speed the county has on a county road is 25 miles per hour.
25 miles an hour.
That's correct.
Is there a reason why we have it that high? I mean, why wouldn't we go to 20? What makes 25 the minimum speed on a?
So I'll have to dig into that, but I think that is the standard. And that may even be at the state level.
Okay, well, again, I support this idea. I think Commissioner Alderson, since it's your district, I mean, Lord knows.
Okay, I move to adopt the ordinance to reduce the maximum speed on Van Ward Road and have Commissioner President sign any related documents.
Second.
I have a first and second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Oster was out, so. And I believe it is now time to hear from the Office of the County Attorney on 2026 legislation.
I think he explained this very well last time. I think the main thing we're looking at is a motion to accept or deny our support.
Correct, almost said Your Honor. It's that kind of morning. Commissioner President Guy, today, recall 2 weeks ago, came forward and gave the first reading of sorts on the 6 proposals that have been received from department agencies, commissioners, allied government agencies, and members of the public on the commissioner's proposed legislative agenda for the 2026 session. Some of these, there's a little bit more information, went to ground in the last 2 weeks, have additional facts and kind of context to give. A couple changes here and there that I'll talk through, but for the most part, this morning will just be a line-by-line reading through the 6 and asking if the commissioners want to take a vote to support these and put them in the package or not. Starting with the very first proposal then, the expansion, the increase from $5 million to $7 million for the borrowing limit for general obligation bonds that can be issued in support of the revolving fund for firefighting equipment and facilities. You'll recollect this comes out of Chapter 46-2 of the local laws. There is a capital revolving loan fund to support the financing of firefighting and rescue equipment and land acquisition and construction costs. That fund is supposed to be a recurring non-lapsing fund that the monies in which will be used to support these loans. Loans can support 90% of the cost of whatever a volunteer rescue squad or fire department is going after. The directives the commissioners gave, the additional research to be done was just to verify that in that code, the authority already exists. The commissioners can set whatever interest rates they want and can set whatever terms and length of the loans that they want. And with one exception, the early report 2 weeks ago that interest rates are determinable at will by the commissioners, as are terms, is true. The exception is that when we're talking about loans to finance equipment and other kind of non-land or construction facility costs, that term is limited to the lesser of the expected life value of the equipment in question or 15 years, whichever is less. Other than that, free. There are no set term limits for land acquisition or construction costs, and the interest rate, the commissioners can only, they have to set quote-unquote low-interest loans. Low interest is not further identified. It's not a particular interest rate where that begins or cuts off. My gloss on that, as long as the loans are less than what they could get out in the fair market, go for it.
Well, my thought would be is that if we're going to do obligation bonds for this, we can't give them a rate lower than what the obligation bond would cost. And it seems like what we're doing now is using fund balance at 0.5%, which is a very affordable rate or very generous rate. Seemed like if we were to go in this direction, we could adopt a policy of 0.5% above whatever the rate is of the obligation bond. I mean,
All right. And again, I think as long as it's quote-unquote low interest, which again, I think the proper comparison there is what would they get out in the fair market, and that's supported a little bit. I went through this code in greater detail. You've even got the option to refinance other loans that are acquired from other sources through this loan program. So I think that contemplation is already made. But yes, Commissioner, I think, again, as long as the interest rate is less than what you get out in the regular marketplace, qualifying. Now, the actual ask, again, is only an increase in the borrowing limit. There is no cap. There is no maximum on the amount of funds or amount of monies that can be appropriated to this fund through any other source. What we're talking about is the amount that is raised by the sale of bonds. That's currently $5 million, last set in 2006. $7 million, the increase is, heard from Director Utz on the 9th. That's roughly what they think they might need for what's in the pipeline. That's also roughly, give or take, a couple $100,000. What we would get if we just adjusted for inflation from 2006 to the present. And that, one other clarification, had said that there was $300,000 that had already been loaned through that fund, through general obligation bonds. That was inaccurate. That $300,000 was in fact loaned, but did not come through general obligation sales under this particular authority to raise funds. That was just part of our general bond or borrowing authority. So this $5 million credit line, for ease of reference, is completely untouched right
So
now.
we have not used any of the 5 million authority.
You have not, no.
With that being said, I have no desire to raise it to 7 million if we're not even using the 5.
Usually, yeah.
I thought last time there was some utilization. None?
300,000 was, again, there
300,000.
had been 300,000 in general obligation fund, or bonds that were sold, then put into the fund. That borrowing authority did not come from this $5 million, though. That came from the county's regular borrowing authority, not this kind of set aside. What I've been likening it to for ease of reference is imagine a house that's got 2 HELOC lines or a mortgage and a HELOC. We pulled from the one credit line. The second one, though, is completely inviolate at this time, and that $5 million is just
So this
sitting
increase has
there
been driven
unused.
by what?
Increased cost,
Foreseeable
right?
years, costs, or whatever?
So increased costs, increased inflation, the fact we haven't looked at this borrowing authority in 19 years, and I think maybe looking back a year ago, maybe a misapprehension early on that this $5 million was a limit in how much total principal we can have in the fund at any given time, not just a debt limit on it.
Are there any, it does kind of make me wonder why nobody has utilized the $5 million. What are the reasons why people have not?
Because they're
That's
using
us.
it as a general fund at 0.5%.
0.5%.
Yeah, no, the reason is we'd have to charge at least what this bond
Whatever
rate
the
would
bond
be.
rate be.
It could be 3-4%.
It's a
Who knows
4%
what it
bond,
is.
we gotta
Yeah.
charge them that.
Yeah, we'd have to charge them at least that.
Right.
So I think what would you need would be, and, you know, we're going to continue the discussion on raising the amount in the, we put into the bond revolving loan fund out of the reserve of our bond fund, I'm sorry, our fund balance. So what we would need would be an article. We would need a motion that would be made and be dismissed, denied, to take this off your plate.
I think no action could just, if we move on from it, it's not
No
adopted by
action.
the commissioners,
No
it
action.
just
There you go.
withers
No
and
action.
dies.
No action. Okay, no action. Next.
All right, number 2, this is the proposal by Commissioner Hewitt to create a public purpose exemption from the Metropolitan Commission's capital contribution charges. And I'll note the, Mr. Erickson, the Executive Director of Metcom, is in the audience, ready to answer any questions or speak to any factual issues that I cannot adequately cover on my own. But had a good bit of research put into this in the last 2 weeks and had a good bit of productive, very substantive conversation with Mr. Erickson of what this looks like. Just to refresh the commissioner's recollection, what the proposal would be is to create an exemption from these capital contribution charges, which for water and sewer EDUs can be, you know, 10 to 13,000 each. So if you're looking for something that needs a water and sewer EDU at the time of development or time of new construction, you're talking low 20,000 in terms of what these costs could be per EDU. Those currently get assessed against county projects, Board of Education projects, other kind of public purpose projects that might be exempt from our zoning authority in counties where they keep all their public water and sewer in-house, may not incur those costs. Get it? We pay it, though, because Metropolitan Commission is a separate organization. Where we looked at from that is both tighten up the numbers on what the cost has looked like to the county in the last 5 years. And again, have that initial figure, it's about 290,000 in EDUs that the county has paid directly. And when I say directly, I mean commissioners of St. Mary's County on the signing line or a department. That does not include the YMCA, which would be covered by this exemption. It would not count any other quote-unquote public purpose where the applicant would be, that would be on county land and would be a county project, for lack of a better term. The applicants other than the commissioners. It also did not include what we have paid the town of Leonardtown for projects that would go into there. And there were 2 projects for Leonardtown that came up. The rehabilitation of the detention center, which was about $110,000, and hold on one moment, please. I confused. The detention rehabilitation center was $426,500. And that was a little bit out the 5-year look back. It was the only other project. Also had the library in Garvey Senior, which was about $110,000, $120,000 back in 2018. So it's not huge government, yeah, $500,000, and I'm saying it's not huge numbers in the grand scheme of things. But that's kind of what it looks like to impact, and I suppose that cuts both ways. When you think of the cost on the county, it's one thing. Also, when you think about the cost on the Metropolitan Commission, maybe it's a number they could work with at the end of the day. Maybe it's a number they couldn't. Mr. Erickson did prepare a 2-page memorandum that's included in the packet that gives Metropolitan Commission some additional information. And they noted that where the capital contribution charges go to, it pays down their debt service. And I think the most salient detail from his memorandum is to say that if the capital contribution charges go away, this, for us, 202 to 290 to 400,000 that we paid out to the county, or that the county has paid to Metcom, if it goes away, the money to pay down the debt service will have to come from somewhere, and that alternative funding mechanism isn't provided for in the legislation. It's not defined. It would be something that we just figure out in the future. Ultimately, that means either Metcom eats those costs somehow if it can, or it finds a way to pass those costs on to consumers, or in a situation where a significant project from the county does come down the pipes and Metcom has to incur debt service or knows it will have to take on debt service to get it, is it just worked out that the county has to give them a contribution in that year's budget to kind of make up for any projected shortfall. Questions that are raised by Executive Director Erickson, not questions that we have definite answers to at this time for how you close that funding gap. Because again, while not a huge number in the grand scheme of things, it will create some funding gap in terms of revenue that is coming in right now that no replacement exists for at this moment. Last little bit of additional information we pulled from is just to look for additional examples statewide of this going on, and can we find other examples, whatnot. And Metcom is a fairly, and I don't suppose I can actually say fairly unique. I suppose it is unique or it's not. So Metcom and St. Mary's County's relationship is unique. The closest comparison, I think directly in terms of a county having a independent public water and sewer provider in it that operates solely within that county, is the Somerset County Sanitary District Incorporated. They have what look like to be our equivalents of capital contribution charges. It appears they are only accessible to residential and commercial projects. Didn't see anything in there about other uses. Didn't see anything in there about whether county projects would pay into it. It's Somerset County, so my ability to find stuff online is limited, but that's the closest straight one-to-one, but it doesn't appear that's there in Somerset. The other close comparison, which is also noted in Mr. Erickson's memo, is the Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission. About 110 years old, serves 1.9 million people across Prince George's and Montgomery counties. That has what they call a system development charge that, again, is not a straight one-to-one, but appears roughly equivalent to our capital contribution charges for the purposes for which it's assessed. Again, it's different. It appears to go by per fixture rather than per EDU. Numbers are a little bit different, and again, every single one of these institutions has their own and their own different kind of funding mechanisms. It does not appear to exempt public purposes. It does have a laundry list of potential exemptions that tie to basically civic, nonprofit, affordable housing, I think some elder things I get in there. So again, contemplation that there are exemptions, but nothing exactly what's being asked for here either. There's also a little bit of just niceties about what WSCC does too, where I think each county, and again, the difference there is you've got 2 counties paying into it and 2 counties that have to play nice with each other and figure out a way to make it work so that one county doesn't basically spend down kind of capital funds or debt service to the detriment of the other. I think each county has basically an amount of exemptions they can give per year that roll over year to year. So there's some stuff going on that isn't here, but that's kind of the additional research and where it stands on this one right now. And open it up to questions. I imagine there will be 1 or 2 about this one.
I just don't think we should pay capital contribution fees on businesses that, or buildings that taxpayers are paying for.
I think it puts too much cost on the Metcom customers alone, and if it's for a public use for all of it, I can't support this.
I think some way it's got to be shared by everyone, not just the Metcom customers. I don't know how we do that, but I would like to see this happen, but then at the same time, it's how do we pay for it?
Well, I think what we need to look at, though, is when we look at Metcom's debt, we approve their debt every year, and their fund balance is close to $40 million. Now, we'll probably have another update when we meet again. And they're,
Mr. Erickson's shaking his head.
oh, well, it was 39.8 last time we met, and their budget is just under 20 million. Now, they have a policy of trying to keep a fund balance that is equal to their yearly budget, and it seems like they're well over that. So again, I just don't believe we should, now, the YMCA is at it, they paid their fee, they paid theirs, so they're not part of this. But that is a county building, and if they didn't have any, because they have some exemptions for firehouses, parks, or something like that, what are the current exemptions?
So the current exemptions, there's about 4 of them. And what they aren't are there are no exemptions from capital contribution charges right now. It's section, I think, 113-22. Variously, there are a number of them. Public parks are included in there. Fire departments are in there. Some other charitable enterprises. But what they are exemptions from either system improvement charges, which are your monthly charge attached to each EDU that's sent out and assessed for maintenance and repair costs for existing facilities, not funding the construction of new facilities, or it's just your user fees, what they're exempt from. But nothing, no exemptions for capital contribution charges right now.
So nobody's exempt from these?
Nobody is exempt from capital contribution charges. Mr. Erickson explained it to me that the idea was there that the relief intended by those exemptions from time to time was keep operating expenses down on these facilities, allow them basically to remain up there. But if they are from at least the first debt or first kind of outing with a new project or new facility, charge the capital contribution charges for that, but kind of make it a one-time only thing at that initial moment.
So it's not what we thought, because I thought it was, you're
thought
saying
there
those
were some
those
exemptions.
4 are not now, no longer part of the program?
No, again, looked into that. That's it's system improvement charges, it's user fees, but no exemptions from capital contribution charges. What it is like we thought is that in the counties that do not have independent public water and sewers, or into public water and sewer services, as far as I can tell, I can't find examples of counties paying into their own system like this. That's kind of our initial outset, one of our initial assumptions, appears for the most part correct. Because again, those counties appear to either just put that into their CIP, fund it through other ways, but in terms of making an individual project and tacking on a couple $100,000 then and treating themselves like a private citizen, I cannot find examples of that. It gets murkier when we look at the close analogs to Metcom, WSCC, in the Somerset County suburban or sanitary district, and as well as any kind of interactions that counties will have with municipalities or towns within their jurisdictions. And again, where you start getting into situations similar to like what we have with Metropolitan Commission.
Any other discussions, anybody on this?
I'm not a big fan of pushing costs onto the customers of Metcom, because that's where the cost recovery would come from. Well, I think that would come out of from that before it would come out of any kind of fund balance. That's just the way I feel on that.
We could have the director of Metcom come up and give a little better
Got it.
knowledge of this.
I did a great job. He's one of your most articulate presenters, for sure.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. That is correct. The Metropolitan Commission has no other form of collecting monies or revenues for its past debt other than capital contribution charges. If you look at our memorandum that was provided to you, the 2-page memorandum on the first page, specifically on the second page, excuse me, we talked about some other jurisdictions. Somerset County is a good example. They do charge for new residential and water connections. I think it's $2,600 for water connections and $5,000 for sewer connections. Whether or not they waive their local jurisdiction is immaterial in my point, because they have other venues and other avenues to also collect for past debt. One of those charges is actually a debt service charge. The other one is an allocation reservation charge that they charge their citizens. So when, I almost said Commissioner Hauser, sorry, John, when your deputy attorney advised you about passing costs on to customers, We have no way to pass that on to customers other than pay out of our reserves. WSSC is unique. I think they're the most close to us, and as Mr. Hauser pointed out, they do cap the number of exemptions that they have each year. I think it's a $1 limit. But what's different is WSSC actually funds their projects by PG County and Montgomery County and Washington, D.C. They actually put money into their capital improvement program to fund projects. So it only makes sense that if you're funding the project, you don't pay the capital contribution charges. So by default, they don't pay. In fact, there's about $46.9 million in the FY25 to FY30 capital projects for both water and sewer. They fund enhancement of infrastructure for not only reconstruction, but other mandated projects. So PG County, Montgomery County, Washington, D.C., Rockville, Maryland, they all put money in their individual capital improvement programs to fund water and sewer projects. County commissioners don't do that. A good example would be St. Clement Shores. We did get some, I think it was about $1 million, between $900,000 and $1 million of ARPA money to help with the design, to help expedite the design. But the other $23 million did not come from St. Mary's County, and that was to provide a service in a no-plan service area, which is typically restricted from Metropolitan Commission to provide service. So I think the unique difference, Lavelle Town, I think it's outside of Cumberland, Maryland, they have a sanitary sewer commission. Town of Leonardtown, I wasn't trying to be facetious or flippant, but the $290,000 you've paid us over the past 5 years for multiple projects, just one project alone was over $400,000, almost $500,000 just for the senior center, the Garvey Center, no, excuse me, the jail expansion. I think the other project was over $120,000. Got a new sheriff office coming up as well. That's going to be quite expensive as well. But our issue is that we can't pass on our debt to consumers. And I think at the top of the second page, Commissioner Hewitt is right. Our audited 2024 reserves were high. The reason they're high is because we don't borrow until we need it. And when it comes time to borrow, we make a decision on whether or not to use the reserves to keep from borrowing and incurring interest or to stabilize our rates. And in 2024, we had $15.5 million in restricted reserves. And if you'll recall from our April presentation this year, $13.2 million of our reserves was being applied to capital projects. In addition, our unrestricted reserve balance was $21.9 million by design, and $13.5 million of those reserves was being applied towards capital projects. Again, one, to keep from borrowing, and two, to keep those capital contribution charges as low as we could. So a significant portion of our reserves were applied, and in addition to that, over $24 million in reserves are being applied between our FY27 and our FY31 CIB. Bottom left-hand corner of our CIB sheets are very similar to the counties. It shows the funding sources, and if you'll look, you'll see METCOM funded or you'll see METCOM reserves in that corner, and when you tally those up, you'll see that another $24 million of reserves are being applied because we're ready to borrow on a lot of projects. So that's the difference. You sort of can't take things out of context. Somerset County, or WSSC, also has what's called a front foot benefit assessment charge, a system development charge, and a service connection charge. So they have other ways they can also pass this on to the customers, whereas Metropolitan Commission only has one. That's it in a nutshell. If you have any other questions, we can give you more data and more information. Tried to be succinct in the memo. I know you like one-pagers, but it ended up bleeding over into two, and I apologize for that.
It's very good.
I do have one question, a little clarification on. It says here on the exemptions on the memo that you had 6 EDUs allocated to the Regional Agricultural Center that and obviously didn't get built, isn't getting built. How you go into some detail on those EDUs, please?
Those are just a number of EDUs that were required for the development of that project. Okay. It's in the exemptions clause only because I wanted to say that the town doesn't exempt, and for only one or two projects, you've paid well over $500,000. And for the 5 projects that Mr. Hauser listed, in addition to those, there was also a Northern Senior Center addition and an Ag Center that also paid capital contribution charges. So I sort of added to the list, but they were, I think, 6 years old, not 5 years old.
Okay.
So I only added those to say that there were also some more.
All right. Thank you.
10 years ago, your capital contribution before your time were escalating rapidly. And when was the last time and since you've been there, and thank you for this, those capital contribution fees have stayed the same? How long have they stayed the same?
On water, they stayed the same for 6 years, I think, and on sewer, they went up.
So they've gone up?
They have gone up.
And what was the increase?
I forget what the increase is. I have the current amount that we're paying. It's less than Leonardtown at the moment. We are paying or charging $10,955 for water EDUs and $8,980 for sewer EDUs.
I guess my point is I think your increases have been minimal.
They have.
Yeah, and I think that's reflective of your finances and what you're running. The department have been very efficient, which is great, which is good. And I guess I'll go back to the point of is taxpayers paying for these fees. Now, if Leonardtown, which has its own municipality, and of course the sheriff department's services the whole county, but the county services the whole county. Now, look, I'm not opposed to if we don't want to take action on this, we don't take action on it. I think where it all boils down to, though, and I'm going to sharpen my pencil this year when I get your audit. I've already read it, and I'll be prepared for you the next time we meet.
Okay. So I'm feeling that we have no action on this.
From me.
Is that what everybody feels? No action.
Well, I mean, I would have liked to
Oscar?
seen the taxpayer not to have to pay for this, but I'm not going to fight for it. I mean, if you're going to say you can't afford it, or you don't do it for anybody else, then that's a different story, because I was under the impression there was 4 exemptions. And now new information says that's not the case. So if that's not the case, then I don't want to, I would have wanted to add it to exemptions that are already being done.
Yeah.
Understood.
That's what I was under the
Saying
impression we were going to do. That's what I thought.
Yeah,
too.
I thought so
Yeah.
too.
And that's-
Understood. The
that was-
exemptions,
That was
I-
my understanding as well.
Yeah, the
So-
exemptions, I believe, are their churches, volunteer fire and
Firehouses,
rescue,
Parks or something like that.
recreation and park facilities, and as Mr. Hauser pointed out, those were service fees and
Those are
service
service
charges.
exemptions, not the hookup.
Well,
which are
again,
part of the
recreation and
operating
parks are
budget.
part of county government, as
Correct.
are any county buildings we do.
Right.
I-
But the
that
county
was my
government does not pay
disconnect.
for the infrastructure for water and sewer, so somebody has to pay for that. There's no
And you're saying
participation.
we're paying for it now, is what you're saying?
Correct.
At our recs and parks, at our parks.
Correct. So for example, a capital project, FDR Boulevard, good example, the department doesn't get charged for your debt service, the taxpayers pay for that. For the Metropolitan Commission, we don't have the luxury of having taxpayer money to fund those projects, so we pay for the projects, and just by default, the users of those facilities have to pay. It's not a double taxation,
So it's
one is for the
passed
capital
on to the
investment.
users of your.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
I see. I'm recommending no action on this.
Okay.
Great, sounds good. No action.
No action.
And hearing that, Commissioners, moving on to the third proposal. Commissioner Ostro's proposal carried over from last year to prohibit roadside solicitation donations in St. Mary's County, adding St. Mary's County to the list of about 5 counties on which any sort of roadside solicitation is banned when done in a roadway median. Commissioners, remember, we supported this last year. It was part of our package. It got out of E&T with some heavy amendments, changing the definition of not just making it any roadside or solicitation, but only that being done in an aggressive manner. Could not make it once it got out of the committee in the final hours, though, to a vote and on to the Senate. Commissioner Ostro proposes resubmitting it this year. We were told last year that maybe there's going to be a statewide bill that comes along with it. Maybe they're going to see some changes to that existing statute as well. That wouldn't just be St. Mary's County, like last year's amended languages, but we will see. For now, all the proposal is a resubmission of exactly what was set up last year, just adding St. Mary's County to the list, not getting into what type of solicitations it is, just drawing no distinction, and not worrying about whether it's quote-unquote aggressive solicitation, which I paraphrase a little bit, but the way I read those definitions, you almost had to be either actively standing in front of the car or banging on it with your hand or some other implement to qualify under that definition. But if the commissioners are interested in setting it up this year, we can do that, see how it does.
I say yes. Just last week, someone had it was on social media that there were some people trying to banging on actual windows at St. Andrew's Church Road in 235 intersection, banging on windows trying to get and then acting very agitated when people were when they were ignored and not given any money. So,
And it's just plain dangerous. I mean, on some of these roads where people are going by at 40 miles an hour, you step off that median at all or lose your footing, it's a bad day all around.
So this transportation article authorizes people to solicit?
No, so right now, it's
Well,
an
I mean,
activity.
I'm probably get the point, why can't we just as a county say no?
So right now, again, I think just good old commissioner form of government, we cannot,
Okay,
on state
understand.
highways and all that, we can't. But what we've got is about 5 counties on there on which solicitation in a median of a roadway is prohibited. Without that prohibition, it's fair game as long as you're not committing some other crime in the process. But what we've done in, I think, Calvert, Charles, Hartford, it's one other, ban it is what this statute does. And what we're proposing is just adding St. Mary's County to that list of counties.
And I've had a lot of people actually reach out to me about this, and they're like, so I can't have my, car washes and things like that? No, this is not what that is about. This is about in the median, and you are actively, you can't be standing in the median waving car wash signs, but if you
Correct.
can have them in a parking lot, and that's perfectly fine.
Right.
But, yeah.
Certainly you can still have your car wash. Certainly you can still, if you're on a sidewalk, you can do your side waving on the sidewalk. It's
Absolutely.
standing within the median doing any sort of solicitation. So that's
Yes.
not just actively putting out the cap or the hat and asking people to put into it. That's any sort of advertisement or solicitation. So that would be waving for the car wash. That would be passing the boot for collections, things like that. Does not discriminate, does not differentiate between types of solicitation or
Okay.
advertisements, and it
That sounds
can't constitutionally.
Well, I thought the differential was we could do it on county roads, but we couldn't do it on state roads. Is that not the case?
I gotta go back and look. Certainly know we can't do it on the state roads, and give me
So our
one
biggest
moment.
problem is on the state roads.
Yeah, 4 and 235.
4 and 235.
No, look, I'll support you on it, Commissioner Ostro. It's just a matter of,
And I have spoken to Delegate Todd Morgan about this, and his answer was that this may come forward as statewide legislation this year, but he's not able to say it definitely will. So that's why I want to put it back up there in case it doesn't.
all right, well, let's move it forward. We're
Okay.
getting behind schedule.
Let's move it forward. Need a motion.
I move to request legislation amending Section 21-507 of the Transportation Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland to include St. Mary's County in the list of counties in which roadside solicitations of money and donations are prohibited, and to approve and authorize Commissioner President to sign letters of support to the delegation, and if introduced as legislation in the 2026 session, to House and Senate committees for hearings on these bills.
Second.
I have a first and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
All right, moving on to 4. This proposal comes from Metropolitan Commission. It's their annual Fix-It Bill for revisions in Chapter 113. Updates, clarifications, revisions. Only some substantive things. Most of these things I feel can fairly be defined or characterized as technical changes. But in summary, page 1 increases the bond required of Metcom's treasurer and deputy treasurer from $25,000 to $250,000. $250,000 is already the bond they're requesting. They say that's more in line with current FDIC guidance and best practices than this very old $25,000 limit. Page 2 changes Section 113-5 to trigger its copious requirements for plans, studies, estimates, and public hearings from any new facility or kind of change in Metcom programming or facilities to just changes that are in areas not planned for service. And a little bit more elaboration on this one. This is the most substantive change that's in the packet this year, I think, from Metcom. 113-5 right now has language in there that in so many words says that anytime Metcom is just thinking a thought in the shower of putting in a new facility anywhere in the county, needs to commission plans, studies, estimates, hold a public hearing, all that jazz. It comes from a time before there was a CWSP and CWSP amendments, and much of the functions that would be achieved by this, I think, can be fully encapsulated and fully kind of captured by the public hearing requirements and process for amending those CWSPs.
This just modernizes it and cuts red tape.
Modernizes and cuts red tape for sure.
I move to request legislation amending Article 19, Chapter 113, as submitted by Metcom, and to approve and authorize the Commissioner President to sign letters of support to the delegation and if introduced as legislation in the 2026 session to House and Senate committees for hearings on these bills.
Second.
I have a first and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Moving on to community proposals. Number 5 is the Farm Bureau's idea to amend the building excise tax to create basically a excise tax or impact fee is what they called it, which is not technically correct for reasons I'll elaborate on more, applicable to solar uses, with the idea being that those monies raised from it could then be put towards land preservation in MALP for another similar thing, to basically preserve farmland from becoming solar farms. They're trying to copy, or they're inspired by this, by a solar impact fee legislation that was just proposed in Queen Anne's County. I think came through in July and either just came back from their planning commission with a recommendation for, or was adopted by the Queen Anne's County just recently. A little unclear to me from what I could find online where they're at, but that's the idea. Difference between us and Queen Anne's County. Queen Anne's County is a code home rule county. 1, has powers that we do not. 2, they also do not have enabling legislation for an excise tax. So I'm going to summarize what kind of current law is in St. Mary's County, what we can do, what we can't do, and whether we want to ask for a change after all. Got with Land Use and Growth Management in the last 2 weeks, and they confirmed that the House position over there right now is that solar farms are covered by the excise tax. We have an example of someone come through, actually build one and pay it, but it's just a, hey, imagine this comes through, how would you treat it? Their response was that obviously any support buildings we would have go up, any like actual 4 walls enclosed structures would get it. They also think that any ground-mounted solar arrays would be covered by the excise tax as well. The category that they would fall under is industrial /flex /other, which is 80 cents per square foot. Back of the hand math, that's about $34,848 in excise tax fees per acre. So if we ever get one of those huge 200-acre solar farms, it's about $700,000 in revenue that's coming through. And that's the law we have right now under our existing excise tax authority. That's what we would apply going forward. If we take no action, if we have no changes, that money's coming in.
So that's already, it sounds like this is already covered. It's just not going towards supporting land preservation. But it seems like that's being done by the MALF, the other state preservation programs.
And that's the only rub. And that is also, so that excise tax is applicable to all solar farms, not just solar farms coming in on grade 1, grade 2 prime agricultural soils. It's everything. The one thing we can't do under it is just automatically segregate those funds for land preservation efforts, because our enabling authority for the excise tax says that those funds shall be put into the general fund, and then the commissioners can make use of it as they will. So there could be a gentleman's understanding that each budget cycle, those funds, or a certain percentage of those funds, get set aside for, contributions to MALP for a similar project, or not. It's the commissioner's discretion. And if we tried to actually force them into SALT legislation to create that, then we get into this legally gray area where is it an excise tax or is it an impact fee? And there's some issues then at that point. But as far as money coming in, you have that right now. It's more than what is being pursued in Queen Anne's. I think it's more than what the Farm Bureau originally contemplated when they put in for this. The only thing we don't have is the forced allocation of those funds towards land preservation.
I think in the 24 legislative session, there was Queen Anne's wanted a total prohibition on solar farms on type 1 soils, if I'm not mistaken. And a question came up this year at Mako, is that when the solar farm gets decommissioned, there's allegedly going to be a trust fund, some kind of a fund set up by the state to remitigate the soil. And with the additions that need to be done to the soil, it would never be able to get brought back into the original state to where it would be actually decent arable land. Is there a way that we could if we pass this on, is there a way that we could take that money from that impact or excise, set it aside in a separate trust, because the state's not going to have enough money in their fund for any decommissioning, and that money, that requirement is going to fall back onto the counties to mitigate that soil to arable conditions. Is there any way we can take that money and set it aside?
About that, because it's their bill.
Yeah, well, there's a legal side of it too. What we do with the money from, if we get $700,000 in from a large solar facility, can we take that money, instead of setting it aside to the general fund, we set it into a trust fund or, just, a rainy day fund or whatever to bring the soil back to some kind of usable condition?
I think that's a good idea, and I think it'd be good for us to develop some kind of a policy just to have it on the books that if that situation does arise.
You were in there when Travis brought that up, and he said there's no way you have to supplement the soil with so much Portland cement, in order to hold the ground-mounted systems.
So again, under current law, it has to go into the general fund. Any proceeds from the excise tax, once it hits the general fund, the commissioners can do with it what they want. But that's a year-by-year discretionary ball by the commissioners. So if we wanted to create a fund or a policy or set aside money, I would think the commissioners could do that. It's just as far as making that automatic and kind of non-discretionary, that's what we would need to pursue additional legislation for. Otherwise, it'll just be a year-by-year decision by whatever the Board of County Commissioners is at that time, whether to contribute money that way or spend it on whatever other good and worthy project it might be. But right now,
But I think we need to find a way that we have some kind of a policy document that when this is being established now, that two boards from now will know and don't have the memory of this board, hey, the intent was we wanted to set this funding aside in order to protect our farmland.
It almost sounds like maybe there could be a little section in the comprehensive plan about planning for land preservation or
it's a good
farmland or,
idea.
hey. Oh, God.
That'd be a
Plug 'em
better
just
way of
loves me,
fixing
don't
it.
they? Point taken. If I'm reading the temperature right, it's a good idea, not interested in pursuing additional legislation right now, knowing that we're expecting money to come in. I'm not doing my job as a lawyer if I don't say that if I'm the solar farms and I get presented a $700,000 tax bill, if I start questioning about the definition of a building and whatnot, because our current enabling legislation says that we can assess it on buildings. And does a ground-mounted solar array qualify as a building or not? Unanswered question. I don't think coming down on solar with a new tax has a whole lot of legs in Annapolis this year. Maybe preserve this as a discussion item for the delegation, talk to them about that on October 7th. But right now, current policy is we would pass this tax, we would assess the tax, it would go into the general fund in an amount more than what Queen Anne's or I think the Farm Bureau contemplated.
So since we haven't been in this situation, I guess it would be good to get a little reassurance that solar ground-mounted would be assess this tax.
We looked at it again. Land use and growth management's position without any cajoling and vagueling pressure from legal was that absolutely no question about it, it would apply. And building is not defined in our enabling legislation. If we go to the building code's definition for building, it's, quote, any structure intended for use or occupancy. And I can play with that. Until we actually have the fight in front of us, who knows how it comes down, though. Or if a large solar operator gets hit with this tax bill and then goes crying to Annapolis, if Annapolis doesn't try and impose something restricting our ability to impose local taxes over a certain amount or not, who knows? But for right now, the state of play is excise tax applies. There's a strong, good argument for why it does that legal has confidence in and that Luggum says would be their policy to implement. And when it comes down, we can see where the chips would fall. Because the other thing is, if they refuse to pay the excise tax, then the project gets held up for months, years to litigate that issue.
So no action at this time, but definitely discuss it with the delegation.
Yeah, I think what we've done in the past with these is we've just passed them on. But I think it's worth a discussion.
I
But
think-
there's a little appetite to put.
This has more than just
solar.
solar into it too now, the whole bill here. It's more than just solar. So I think we should be considerable to definitely pass it on, for sure.
Yes.
So you'll be able to get.
Because it's got a lot of renewable, a lot of different things in here that they have asked for other than the solar, such as exemptions, credits, refund for.
Yeah, again, I think we
things like
let
that
them, let the Farm Bureau deal with the delegation because they can.
Yeah, and then you'll have almost 90% of the shore willing to stand with us on this one.
Yeah, that is true.
True,
All right.
true. So do we want to make a motion to accept it or pass it on?
I
just-
think
no
if I'm
action.
reading right, no action, but just keep it as an informational item for the delegation.
Yes.
And kind of present them to them,
And
saying,
we'll
you think we have
discuss
this
about me
authority?
signing a letter to support this in the
support it.
future.
Okay.
Okay?
Got it.
So no action at this time.
And I think a big thing is if Delegate Morgan and friends tell us that maybe it does have, for an impact fee, some legs up there.
Which delegate?
Todd Morgan, chair.
Okay.
Maybe we reassess them, but, got it.
Okay.
And the
six.
last proposal, from Mr. Chris McDonald to amend the admissions and amusement tax by creating an exemption for family-oriented recreation and entertainment facilities. Mr. McDonald's idea was that he thought that an exemption to the admissions and amusement tax for certain family-oriented recreation and entertainment facilities from the admissions amusement tax would be advantageous and help support these businesses. His specific ideas of what they should apply to were roller rinks, bowling alleys, theaters, mini golf centers, arcades, indoor playgrounds, amusement facilities, and other businesses primarily engaged in providing recreation for families and youth. The big additional bit of information in the last 2 weeks that we got on this one, Finance has started to receive vendor reports from the comptroller's office showing our proceeds that we get from the admissions and amusement tax. They don't break it down by individual payer. They do, however, break it down by broad category it goes into. And I attached each of the 4 quarterly reports into the packet. Of the uses that Mr. McDonald's identifies there, we don't have operators in St. Mary's County right now that are paying the admissions tax, except for if we think theaters should be read to apply to movie theaters. Motion pictures are covered in there. Motion pictures are about half of our takings from the admissions and amusement tax. But as far as theaters, concerts, amusement rides, miniature golf, skating, skate rentals, we just don't collect any admissions and amusement tax under those categories at all already. And bowling alleys are already exempt under state law.
I just don't think this is another no action.
Yeah, no
I think so, I
action.
agree. No action.
Yeah.
I agree, no action from us.
Like I think what I said last meeting, I'd rather see, if someone's going to come in with a family amusement type, because there's a definite need in the county for more family amusement. I'd rather see something, maybe a tax credit through economic development or a pilot as opposed to repealing this one, so.
Do something locally.
And insurance scares them way more than amusements tax would. Sure.
Yeah, we actually got at the numbers. It's just well-intentioned, but there's just no money being paid.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we're going forward on 2. We'll prepare that, and we have our joint meeting on October 7th in this room with the delegation.
Yes, correct, 6:30.
Right.
Got it. Thank you,
Thank you,
Commissioners.
Mr. Hauser. Good job, good job.
That is all from the county administrator this morning.
It's almost too much. Okay, now we'll get right into Commissioner's time. We're going to start with Commissioner Hewitt this time.
Oh, I'll be quick because I know we have a post-meeting afterwards. What about that county fair? Packed every day. What about those pumpkins? 1,050 pounds, 566 pounds. That was just amazing. County fair was wonderful. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to travel through the Charlotte Hall area, and we know we've heard a lot about all the gas stations and all the things that are happening in development in Charlotte Hall. But I was interested to note that I needed gas. I figured I'd buy it up there because I was going to Washington. And the point was, I bought it at Sheetz at $2.83 a gallon. And what's interesting is just up the street was Exxon at $3.19 a gallon, Royal Farms at $3.15 a gallon, 7-Eleven at $3.19 a gallon. This is a difference of over 30 cents a gallon. Now, I get it. We have enough gas stations. We have enough saturation. But I do believe that competition lowers prices, and that if you can save over 30 cents a gallon on gasoline, you will take that. Otherwise, if everybody keeps it all up to same prices, that does not service the community. But I do get the idea that it is overdeveloped, or maybe being overdeveloped. But the main thing people need to remember is, to get out of this county, you have to go up Route 5 to get out, unless you're going over to the bridge over to Virginia. But the key is there's so many cars, so that's why those gas stations are going in. But I was happy to see that people are able to save that much on 1 gallon of gas. Thank you.
Very good. I don't think we have a meeting after this.
Oh, no, I do.
Oh, okay. Just making sure. Great county fair, a lot of fun, beautiful weather the whole weekend. The giant pumpkin, it's a record for the whole Southern Maryland region, I believe, and I had an opportunity to go and listen to the farmer talk about how you can grow your own giant pumpkin. It's a lot of work. Sure. I don't think I'm going to do it. It's a lot of work that goes into that and time. Very impressive. But he wants to be able to carve it out and have a whole armada of giant pumpkins as boats. And so a lot of fun. Just great seeing so many people at the fair and having a peaceful fair and just a great fair to celebrate agriculture in our community. We received some disappointing news this past week. For many years, the Robo Nation has had a UAV drone competition here in St. Mary's County. It used to be down at Webster Field, and then it got moved up to our airport. And they've decided, Robo Nation, the organization, has decided not to renew it here in St. Mary's County and to move it instead to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And that's disappointing. It's a shame. My understanding is it came down to easier airspace there and Tulsa putting in more attraction money on the table to get them there. But that competition brought students from all across the United States and internationally here to fly their drones. They would design them, build them, fly them, and they perform different jobs with them. It was a fascinating thing. I know Commissioner President Guy had been out there. So it's a shame that it's not going to be here for now. But the opportunity will come that we can recompete to get it back here, and hopefully we can all work together and put forward a really good package to get them back to St. Mary's County, because it's just a natural fit for what we're trying to do in this area with our airport, with the Navy bases here, and the engineering that goes on. It's a really good fit, and it just really shows that we always have to be forward-looking, supporting our economic development and what they're doing, thinking about the future. And so it's a shame to lose it, but I'm really hopeful we'll be able to get it back within a couple years. Also, I want to hit on, Commissioner Alderson shared the post the other day, the Mattaponi road improvements. This has been a long time coming. The college has asked for it. Mattaponi Road is the oldest road on the maps in the entire state. It's absolutely incredible, and it shows its age a little bit. It's a little bit of a dangerous road down there south of St. Mary's City there, going along the college, and the college especially has been requesting some improvements there. It's going to be wined a little bit. It's going to be smoothed out a little bit. That's going to be starting next Monday, hopefully, weather dependent, and should last for about 30 days. Traffic will be impacted a little bit, but it's necessary, it's needed, and it's time. So it's good to see that happening. Finally, want to highlight this coming Saturday is Taste of St. Mary's at the airport. Chamber of Commerce always does a great time with that, so hopefully you can get out and enjoy it. Thank you.
All right, I'll try to be quick also. This weekend at the fair, had a fantastic time. I love fair food. My arteries do not, but be that as it may. And I talked to Royce Miller. He's the owner of MIR. And as many of you know, NHRA racing will begin at MIR next year. This is going to bring up something that this county has never seen before, because I don't really think we truly appreciate how large an event this is going to be. It's already slated to be nationally televised through Fox Sports, and you'll get the biggest names, drag racers in the Western Hemisphere, basically, because even for World Cup, they have people from Puerto Rico and Central America and Canada come down. But Mr. Miller asked me to meet with some of our members of our some of our other agencies and our partners to form a task force to try to figure out how we're going to tackle this when it happens next year, so we aren't caught proverbially with our pants down. So I'm looking forward to working with that and making that a successful event. That's next year. Like I said, the fair was great. Friday, I was at the Tech Center for breakfast with some of the trades teachers. As many of you know, I helped the Tech Center get their national accreditation from the Printing Industries of America 100 years ago, it seems like. And then, and I was also a Skills USA judge for their graphic arts program a long time ago. And my current job that's outside of this building, I work in the printing industry still, and the agency I work for is looking at almost 50% loss of force over the next 18 months through retirements. And the stuff that those kids are learning in the Tech Center now are the things that we use now in our agency, and they're trying to migrate to. So we have kids who are being trained right here in St. Mary's who are workforce ready. And it's just a matter of getting them up to DC to, if they're willing to take that. But like I said, the jobs are there, and we are have an amazing resource over in Leonardtown with the Tech Center. And I've started since I came on board. I've always been a strong supporter of the Tech Center and the trades, and I remain steadfast in that. Taste of St. Mary's on Saturday at the Aero Park. Hopefully we don't get the rain that they're calling for, all the rain that they're calling for. There's a Wine and Oyster Festival at St. Clair West in, I guess that's Clements. I just call it Oakley Road. And then the Mechanicsville Moose Car Show Sunday morning at 8 o'clock. And so I'm going to be hard pressed on Sunday to hit those two events. And with that, I hope everybody has a great rest of the week, and I hope to see you around the county.
Okay, Mr. Ostro.
All right. Well, I wasn't able to be here last week for the commissioner meeting. My day job had some issues that I needed to handle and address. So I want to kick off my commissioner time, and I'm just going to touch on this briefly. A lot of people have reached out to me over the last 15 days, 12 days, over the unfortunate assassination of Charlie Kirk. A lot of people in this community are experiencing a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, a lot of worry, a lot of fear. I could go down the list. Whether you agreed with Charlie Kirk or not, that, in my opinion, truly doesn't matter. He was assassinated over words, over the First Amendment, his right to speak. And one of the things that makes me, I don't want to say happy, but gives me hope, is that out of this horrible tragedy, we are seeing communities hosting events where people are coming together in prayer and in unison and in peace. Hopefully, we have perhaps the good that will come out of this is that people realize that just because I disagree with you or you disagree with me, we do not have to resort to violence. We can still be friends. We have gotten away from that so much in this country. And hopefully through this tragedy, people will turn back to that. And it doesn't matter, the old saying, right? It doesn't matter what you say, but I will fight for your right to say it. And that's important. And we need to make sure that everybody can pursue their First Amendment rights to the fullest and not be afraid of retribution or assassination. And I pray that there is going to be a lot more events in and throughout the county and throughout the country. And I do pray that we keep them peaceful and we honor the memory of this young man who never incited violence, who stood for what he believed in, whether you agree with him or not, and that we can continue to work towards working together and being able to speak and keep peace. That is the most important thing. And the things that we're seeing, people, church attendance is up, people are gathering together, people are speaking together, and that's wonderful to see. And I pray that kind of message continues. So that's what I have to say about that. This past weekend, County Fair was great. Had a fantastic time. Was able to attend with my kids and grandkids on Friday, and just enjoy some time at the fair. Had an incredible time judging first time for me, judging the speech contest at the fair. We got some brilliant young people in this community, and the quality of the speeches that were written and the thoughtfulness that was put behind some of those was really amazing, and just so much fun to do, and really already looking forward to next year. I already told him I'd be happy to be a judge again next year, and so really looking forward to that again. Also, the coolest commish is now quite possibly also the hottest commish, because I won the first place and the second place for my hot sauces at the fair this year. So very proud of that. Already working on my recipe for next year. It's going to be even better.
Did you bring my bottle?
No, I forgot your
did?
bottle,
Oh,
sir.
geez.
But I will make sure I get that into your hands. And it was funny. Afterward, I put a post up, and I've had so many people reach out to me like, can I buy your hot sauce? Can I buy a bottle? I do not sell my hot sauces, but I make a lot. So if you want one, reach out to me. I'm happy to give you a bottle, as long as supplies last.
I want the first place one.
You got it. Once again, the Taste of St. Mary's is coming up this Saturday. I plan to get out there, hopefully, weather permitting. We don't get rained out on that, but always a great event, and looking forward to that. There's still lots happening in and throughout the county, not just the Taste of St. Mary's, as Commissioner Alderson said. Mechanicsville, there's a car show on Sunday. We have our farmers markets are still growing strong. Get out, support local, enjoy beautiful St. Mary's County. And with that, I'm going to pass it on.
Good. Very short here. The county fair was great again. It was really something, and I noticed on Saturday that it must have been a record number. I'm thinking, because I left there around 2:15, and they closed the main parking lot, and they were directing people into the school lot, which didn't have many spaces left. I was parked over there originally, and they were filling up fast. So they must have had a record number on Saturday attend the fair. It was a good fair. I had a chance to run around the county this past weekend to go to the Red Barns and the Amish dairy for their cheese. And there's so much going on around. If y'all haven't got a chance to go to any of these Amish markets or any of these markets, not just them, but all these farmers, a lot of them have markets on the side. And I usually use Russell's Market. But anyway, there's so much going on. It's such great food. Now, when you go to the barns, you got to make sure you shop before you buy something. 'Cause I ended up going to 3 different Amish, and I really wanted a quart of their beets, pickled beets, because they're really good. But I went from $8 to $7 to $6. So I finally bought a $6 bottle, like the same bottle, same size, same everything. So anyway, I ended up saving myself a couple dollars by shopping. So I'm letting you know that. Shop a little bit.
See, competition.
Yes, competition works really good. I got a chance to visit one of the smaller wineries in our area. I did taste some of their wine. I think it was down to when we had the Maryland tasting down there to the, it was Zella, very small. They've only got, I don't know, like 15 acres total. And he's got, plus he's got his house on there. And we went through there and did a little tasting. I bought a couple bottles of wine. He got some great red wine. I don't know how he does it, but.
Big Red Barn, Big Bad Red, or something like
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah.
That's the red that they had today.
Oh, yeah, and it's really, it's a nice little winery. He's got a little tasting room there. It's open on Saturday. And he had several people there, couples there. We went by, and he's got some very good wines. So locally, if you're looking for, we say our wines are sweeter in this area. It's not true. They've got a lot of good wines, just red and Chardonnays that are really good wine. And I advise everybody to try it out. Even Port of Leonardtown, of course, they buy from all over the state. I think their grapes and everything, but they make up some very good wines. So I'm back about that. So anyway, with that being said, I'm done. Meeting adjourned.